Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. I'm also CEO and founder of Cavness HR. At Cavness HR, we deliver HR to companies with 49 or fewer people. The AI-powered tech platform while providing you access to a dedicated HR business partner. Our guest today is Andrew Biddle and Drew. Drew, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Drew, always try to start off with a softball question.
Sure.
Can you talk about maybe something that you do for fun or a hobby?
Fun is work. They're kind of intertwined. I'm lucky enough to get to have my hobbies as my work. So I think that line is blurred
Yeah,
with what I do.
I think so too.
Um,
That's how I am too.
yeah, that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. You get to work on the things you find most interesting. And so if I have off time, we're like, all right, well, just back to work, I guess.
I know, right?
So
Yeah. Then how do you take care of yourself?
uh,
Either mentally, physically, or however you want to define that.
that is a constant battle. Um, I think lately I'm trying to get more sleep, which is difficult because there is just so much to do. Um, you know, I try to work out at least 4 times a week.
I suck so much at that.
Yeah,
Every
well,
day having the chance to get up and go to the gym. I haven't been to worked out in so long. If I walk 20 minutes a day, that's my workout,
but yeah,
unfortunately.
it's funny because like I'll have this thing in my mind where I have to take time off to work out, and then that's time away from work. But an hour working out, I'll come back and I'll have the epiphany that I've needed for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So it's I used to kind of pride myself on how many hours of work I would do in a week or
Mhm.
even in a day. It's kind of like, all entrepreneurs want to say like, oh, I put in 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, whatever. But come to find out, um, I've started to interpret that as more like bad management of time.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when I hear an entrepreneur talk about, they put in 16 or 18 hours a day, I start to interpret that more like, well, is that because you're a workaholic, or is that because you don't trust your employees enough to trust them with some of your workload?
And that all the time they really focus work, right? Or is just like doing busy work, or like, are you
Yeah,
saying you work, or you just
yeah,
like,
yeah. Or they're making themselves irreplaceable in the business. So like with RoofTec, I'm probably spending maybe 3, 4 hours a day on it, if that, maybe two. My receptionist might say one because I'm hard to get a hold of often. But I think my most recent like badge of honor as an entrepreneur is being able to say like, well, I can take off a day. I can
mm,
come here for 3 hours and my phone's not going to go crazy because I trust the people who are working for me, and they're phenomenal people. I've had the same crew for over 3 years now. So
now did you, because you're actually a company now, right? You're not really a startup anymore, right? Did you have the same
yeah,
attitude? You really can have the same attitude as a startup, can you? As a startup, you're
no,
not going to put in some hours, right?
not anymore. I think we're established enough to actually say it's a legit company now. I'm always trying new ideas to kind of you know startup people want to always have something new, something fresh. But we have a routine down. And I think the pivotal moment actually was probably 2 years ago when I left the country for a while.
Mhm.
Because it's so hard to step away from your company and trust that the people you leave behind are going to be able to make it work. Um, but uh, actually, it was a little more than 2 years ago. But I left for Ukraine when that war kicked off, and and that's when I had to put my business on hold. Not on hold, but just essentially trust my employees to work for
Mhm.
me while I was gone. And it was a situation where it was like, not only will I not be answering my phone, like you can't bother me with anything because I'm going to be focused on the task at hand.
So going to Ukraine made you switch off from the 18 hours a day you're working.
Well, yeah, well,
I mean, on your company, obviously not in Ukraine, but
well, yeah, in Ukraine, I'm quite busy, but essentially, I gave everyone in the company a quick talk, like, hey, I'm going to be, don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine. I'm not going to be like on the front lines or anything like that. But I will be not able to answer your phone calls. If there's a problem, here's the company card. I give you guys authorization to make purchases, make things happen. Um, and I think with that, I learned you have to have a good balance between both authority and
Mhm.
responsibility. Because if I'm holding them responsible for making the company work while I'm gone, I have to also give them the authority to to do things while I'm gone. So that was a big growing moment for me as a business owner, and I think for my entire crew also.
So in your mind, how do you know it's time to like switch from like a so-called startup mode to like, quote unquote, a real company?
Very good question. So you kind of just have to know. It all depends on who you have as a team. Um, Sometimes people will interpret any kind of any fire within the company as someone's mistake, but you have to like before you let someone take controls of the company, take control of the daily operations, you have to already forgive them and trust them in advance. Um, and that's to say, like, okay, while I'm stepping away from the company, I already know there will be problems, there will be issues, and I've already forgiven people for that, and I trust them to have the judgment to do the right thing when that problem does come about. Um, Another humbling thing for me was thinking like, well, how many mistakes will I make if I'm low on sleep, overworked, distracted, spread thin? I'll probably make more mistakes in that mindset than my employees will, fully rested, fully engaged, on site, and like emotionally invested in what's going on. So a big part of it was kind of calling myself out and just saying like, don't think that the whole sky is going to fall if I'm gone. The sky might actually clear if I'm gone. And it takes a leap of faith to really make that happen. But we're at a point now, I got a crew working over in Kirkland right now, big project. Phone's not ringing, and it's good to know that I had the right guys on the job site and smooth.
And how long has the company been in business?
Oh, I started. It was like a weekend thing that I started like 5 years ago. It was not even meant to be like my full-time gig, but being a veteran coming back to the U.S., it's really difficult to find work. People, as much as they want to help veterans get integrated into the workforce, they really do underestimate us. And to be fair, because my resume does look like a scam almost. So it's all over the place, uh, from being in the army to private military contractor, sniper, uh, electric vehicle startup in the Caribbean, and then roofing, and then defense tech. It's um, it's all over the place. In my mind, it makes total sense. There's a perfectly good explanation for that arc of the story, but if you imagine my resume coming across some HR desk or some headhunter, you're going to look at this and just think, what am I looking at? What does this guy do exactly?
Yeah, I said it before. I said again. Most civilians have no idea what we do in the military. Like for them, a general private does the same thing. Don't have a clue at all what we do.
What do you mean with what?
Like they think a general does the same things a private. They think
Oh, right. Like we all kind of just walk around aimlessly looking for something to shoot.
yeah.
I think it's kind of what they
Yeah,
picture. Yeah.
here's a story for you. So I left the army. I retired. I had an interview for this job, right? So I put in
Okay.
for this one position. It's one of the bigger companies here, right? It was like a what's called a phone interview, and the lady recruiter said, "Hey, I know you applied for this job, but we were actually want you to interview for the job. You're lower." I said, "Well, can I ask why?" Well, the job interview you have 5 reports. I said, "I'm retired as a major. I've had literally hundreds of people under me. All this blah blah blah." We realize that and I appreciate that, but at our company, we let our people have input, and we know the army, you just
Oh,
tell people
right.
what to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? Y'all really believe this?
That's not true at
Do
all.
you really believe this?
Yeah, it's not true at all.
No.
And at the same time, a lot of veterans will think, well, business will think, oh, because this guy was like an ex-Navy SEAL or because they were, a major
Yeah.
and whatever, they're going to be great at leading this team. That's not entirely true either because we never have to worry about making a profit.
Yeah.
Like you could easily call in your whole company of infantry or battalion of
Mhm.
infantry 3 hours earlier than they need to be to have them on standby
Yeah.
without worrying about
Overtime,
paying them
overtime
extra.
pay,
Right.
all the
Yeah.
bad publicity,
Or even just logistics. We'll be in a combat zone and drop $5 million worth of ordnance on two insurgents
Mhm.
and get a medal over that. But
Yep.
as a business perspective,
Not so no, not
it
so
just did
much.
not make sense. So we're,
No.
we're getting to that now when we're talking about making things be more affordable and attritable.
Mhm.
That's becoming more part of the discussion. But that's probably the biggest difference I saw working from the actual military,
Right.
like uniform military versus the private military. The private military does have, at the end of the day, profit, at least as a factor.
Yeah.
The mission still comes first, of course, but we do have to rotate people in and out so that we're not paying overtime. There's risk pay. There's things like that too.
Yeah.
So
Another difference too, I think people don't realize, don't get like in the military, everyone is expected to get up and give a class or public speak, right? You could be E4 private.
Yeah.
You're gonna do. I don't care what your rank is. You at least do sound training one time, right?
Right.
Or like you're a company, the junior interns are gonna give a presentation like 500
No.
people, right?
No. Yeah. There's definitely that aspect to it. But all in all, I think the military was really underrated in terms of their ability uh, to think on their own. That's kind of the hallmark of our military versus other
Yeah.
ones is small unit leadership.
We talked about earlier how the lady said, "Hey, oh, you just tell people what to do." Like my experience, all the people like that were horrible leaders. They could have got fired. The great
Right.
leaders were the one who said, "Hey, give me your input." You know,
Yeah. Well, like the Ranger motto, sua sponte, and it translates to in the absence of leadership, take charge.
Mhm.
And we spoke about that yesterday. It's a very entrepreneurial kind of
Yeah.
phrase where, as entrepreneurs, what are we doing? In the absence of a product or in the
Mhm.
absence of direction from the established companies,
Yeah.
we need to fill that gap.
Yeah. How you pushing the company forward? How you pushing the mission forward? Like how you moving forward all the time?
Well, yeah, and it's daunting because oftentimes when those gaps appear, we expect the established companies to fill that space. We expect Apple to fill that space. We expect Microsoft to
Mhm.
fill that space, and they may not for whatever reason. Maybe it's not worth the time and investment for them. Maybe they want to do five things well and not the auxiliary things. Um, and a big part of being an entrepreneur is seeing that even though I don't have a formal education in engineering, there's a lot of engineering work that needs to be done in like the construction sector and robotics. There's enough work for a lot more people.
So back to the when you used to work 18 hours a day. So you work
Yeah.
18 hours a day, and then finally you decide, okay, this ain't working, and you go like, oh, I say working 9 hours a day. What did you do with the extra time you had? Right,
Uh, well, just I read more.
read more. Okay.
Yeah, and I just made probably better decisions. I was
Hmm.
better informed. And really, when I hit like the 18-hour a day kind of thing, that lifestyle, there were things. It's weird. You get in a situation where you're not getting everything done. Still, like you're dedicating 18 hours a day. You're making good use of your time. I'm not in Facebook messing around. I'm not on YouTube getting distracted. Like I'm 100% working. And when things keep falling through the cracks, I realize like there's nothing more that I can do. Like I am a 100% in this, and there's more than I can handle.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. Like I think it's called the law of diminishing returns. Like suppose like you practice shooting like free throws, right?
Right,
There
right.
could, to a time like you've supposed to hit 10 in a row. I think we hit a certain level, then you start degrading, right? That makes any sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the importance of just going for a walk for 20 minutes. I think a lot of theories and realizations have taken place during long walks. I know Darwin came up with his initial theory while he was on a walk with his wife, I believe. Um, so you never really know, taking that moment to reflect could be that one moment you needed to actually have that epiphany that creates a new product or an entirely new company also.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard though. It almost takes daily reminders for me to do that. Um, and it's for a lot of us entrepreneurs, business is addictive. Like I said, it's the line between hobby and work. It's a very blurred line.
Uh-huh.
So when we do take time for ourselves, it's like, well, how do I keep myself from just going back to work if I enjoy what I do?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you do your schedule? You work Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays? Like how do you do your work schedule? Is it pretty
Um,
regular, like pretty typical 9 to 5 schedule
I
now?
don't really have a schedule. I don't have a schedule. What I do is with my receptionist, who's phenomenal. Her name's Monique, and what she does, and she goes through a lot because of my lack of schedule. She deserves a lot of credit for that. But what I tell everyone is, if there's a situation where you can't handle it, you really think it needs my input or my face on it. Maybe a customer has a problem and they feel they need to be, speak to the manager, as they would say. I try to keep myself available so we have that nuclear option to take care of things. But if I'm already tasked out 4 appointments a day, I can't be that final option for people. So it's really important to keep my schedule just wide open, and then whatever fire comes out about the day, I should be free to just jump on it and take care of it. It doesn't happen often, but just like in the military, you want to make contact with the enemy with your smallest unit first,
Mhm.
and so you have enough resources to flank and maneuver and adjust to things, because there's always a second part to every story, right? So whatever happens in the company, I want to be available. Maybe have my truck available, empty, ready to carry something to someone, or just have my phone available to talk to someone.
So how do you do this? It's like this, in my opinion. It's like a lot of companies, they're like hire someone brand new and have that person do customer service, right? So you have your most junior, untrained, lack of knowledge person do customer service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that seems like the wrong answer, right? You should have your most experienced person do customer service. How do you handle that at your company?
I actually I do like having new people, fresh people, because I think a big part of I think every company, as a culture, we get trapped into an uncomfortable norm, and it's hard to have a new norm in your company. Like you bring a new hire on because there's something about your company you want to change. Either you're growing or you want to change something, and it's easier to change it when you have someone fresh that
So you're not scared they might say, I don't know about this, or
no, I think if you do a good interview, you can spot them. Great people are great regardless if they went to college or not. So like Monique, my receptionist, she has a degree, I think, in the computer programming. Doesn't use that degree at all, but she cares so deeply about everything and everyone that she's great at what she does. And So I think you would spot that very quickly.
okay.
It's almost she cares. She's a good addition to me because as an entrepreneur, my mind's in 1,000 places, and she's very, very detail oriented. So I think you have to know, like, as a business owner, what are you weak on? And instead of hiring, some people will hire someone like their twin because they want to get along with them. But you need to be able to say, like, okay, um, you know, we have two people here driving this car. I'm the gas pedal. I'm the one that's always wanting to go fast. I need someone to be the brake pedal.
Yeah.
I need someone to be like, nope, can't do that. Maybe you should check your blind spot
Yeah,
on
you're
this
right.
one.
So many entrepreneurs hire a
Yeah.
mini me.
Yeah. I want the polar opposite of me.
Yeah.
I need that.
Like me, I'm an introvert. I can't create anything. So to me, I want extroverts and creative people.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. So, and that's kind of the natural uh, evolution of being a business owner, is just knowing your own personality, and having someone else come on board that is the opposite of that, the yang to the yang, I guess you could say. But yeah, having someone new on customer service, I enjoy that, because I love watching someone go from zero to something, um, especially if they're coming out of high school or they're coming out of college. Um, when you have someone young like that, their life has already changed dramatically from like age 16 to 18, and changed again from like 18 to 22 or 24. So they kind of have like this momentum, this expectation of momentum. And if you can bring someone like that into an organization, they have an expectation of momentum. And so, me being in my 40s, we start to kind of accept things the way they are. So it's good to have um, newcomers come into the organization and keep expecting things to change, expecting things to get better. They expect pay raises. They expect next year to be different. And that's hugely important.
So no, every company talks about, providing a great user experience, great customer service, great customer experience, but all of them do. What do you do at your company to make sure your customers have the greatest experience as possible?
Well, it's it starts with the sales team, and you know, to be honest, I don't really care for sales, although I do a pretty good job at it. My tactic is to speak as intelligently as possible about the problem. So a lot of, like, I think a good customer service or customer experience is going to come from, is this person in my house selling me a roofing system or a roof service? Are they taking the time to understand my actual issue? Are they talking to me, or are they presenting me their 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 iPad and their PowerPoint presentation? You see that a lot. Like, go to like these roofing sales gurus and whatever else, they have like these actual multimedia presentations that you can show customers, like, this is our technology and our shingle and blah blah blah. Business owners need to understand that customers don't really care about their company, not nearly as much as they care about their actual house. So you need to talk about their problem, their house, and and fill in the gaps where they they may not have the knowledge they need to make the right decision. So the compliments I usually get are going to be, if I win a bid, it's because I was the most informative. Now, my sales guy, on the other hand, he's the exact opposite. Like we talked about, have someone the exact opposite of you. He's all smiles. He could sell anything to anybody. Everyone loves him. Completely different personality. And as a team, we're great because he, I'll say this, sales has a very bad habit across any company, in my opinion, to outpace the product. Sales can really be too much of a sales entity and close a deal without really matching the right product with the right problem. And then the team behind them has to come in and actually close that gap and be the bearer of bad news and saying, well, okay, now that we have this contract, turns out our app or our widget or our whatever service doesn't really match your problem.
So, for example, your sales guy, I'm making this up, of course. Your sales guy might say, yeah, we can place your roof with solar panels that are,
Yeah. So my sales guy, Patrick, he's a guy that everyone loves. I'll say I don't have any friends, of course, but he's way more personal than I am. Great in sales in that respect. But when it's added to me, now we have just a pure like frontal cortex decision to make sure that what we are doing is actually going to work. And you're going to know if it works or not because we're going to put this thing on a house and it's going to last for 20 years. So you really have to know what you're talking about and know what you're doing. So I think a good sales team, or a good customer experience, going back to that, comes from making sure you actually have a good human face to the product. But there's no shortcut to knowledge. You have to know what you're doing. There's no shortcut around that.
So I handle this right.
Yeah.
Make this up again. Let's suppose you're doing a job for a customer and you're halfway through the job, right? And for some reason that customer just becomes like too needy or too demanding. It's like,
yeah, we've had that.
And you're like, okay, I'm halfway through the job, like you just say, hey, we did have the job, we can't do it no more. Or you just try to quote unquote use arm to suck it up and like keep on going.
I can spot that before it happens usually. So a question I'll ask, my customers will watch this podcast and know all my secrets now. But I will ask them, because usually when someone's doing a roof, they're usually doing other things. Like they're at a point in their life where, okay, I'm gonna get the roof done. I'm gonna redo the bathroom. I'm gonna redo other things with this. And so a really good question to ask a homeowner is, what other projects do you have going on with the house? How is that project going? Are you happy with that contractor? And that will kind of give you an idea of like what their expectations are. You'll have everything from someone saying, "Oh, phenomenal, they're great, no issue," and here's his card, recommend him to your next customers, whatever. Or you may have someone that's like, "Oh, their truck's really loud. They drive a pickup truck."
It's a fucking truck.
Yeah, and I've had that. People have had requested that when we're on the job set, we don't bring trucks. And so when it comes to that,
That's like a red flag.
Yeah,
I would think.
then I would gladly tell them like, call my competitor.
Yeah,
I want you two to work together for sure. So, and that takes experience too. You can't just say every customer is right, and you don't want every customer. You just have to basically say like this one project could soak up all my energy, and so the trades are so they're in so much trouble right now that contractors actually have quite a bit of freedom to choose who the customers are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, can you other stories where you like, a customer says horror story, you'll hear someone like on Facebook say, I'm looking for someone to redo my deck. They quoted me $50,000. Like, how's this $50,000?
Yeah, I get that too. Especially on Bainbridge, we get a lot of that, and they'll cross the bridge and everything goes up in price.
Yeah.
And the thing about that though is I've gone to houses that are on the water. They're just basically mansions on the water, and you may think this person's well off or they have a lot of money, but as you get into the bidding process, you may find out that the person is selling the home because they have cancer, right? Or they have bills to pay over a death of a loved one. There may be some very tragic reason why this house is being re-roofed or worked on, and you can't just assume that nice house equals tons of money.
Yeah.
So sales is a very humbling process.
Yes, it is.
As soon as you think you have the world figured out, you have people figured out, you meet one more customer that challenges your model, and I think it keeps you humble for sure.
So you might not know the answer to this, But from your experience, like doing roofs for the contractors, do most people like, take out a second mortgage, a HELOC, equity, or to pay for
Yeah,
stuff?
sometimes. Or they'll go to um, a credit union is usually pretty good. We've seen less of that because rates have gone up a little bit.
Mhm.
But your normal house is going to be within the budget of a couple credit cards, maybe. You know, 12,000, 18,000 is not uncommon for most middle class homes. If there's a lot of work going on, then it might be like 20,000, 25,000. If there's like insulation replacement, all that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
but I think most people with like a couple credit cards can do that.
Okay. And then what your company does, you do re-roofing for residentials. Is
Right.
there like a certain like niche you have, like that the roof has to be 10 to 20 years old, 30 or 40, or does that matter?
Oh, well, if it's new construction usually fails very quickly because new construction is usually put on by the most novice roofing crews out there. Um, for your listeners, new roofing crews are paid about half of what re-roofing crews are paid, and the quality shows for sure. So if it's new construction, anywhere between 13 and 16 years, statistically, that's when they get replaced. Um, and then if the roof has been done before, or is it the second roof going on, usually around 18 to 22. You might get some outliers that are like 28 years old, um, uh, maybe 30, but those are very, very rare cases.
What are some indicators that someone should replace their roof? I mean, obviously, if it leaks, it needs to replace it, but even like
Yeah, well,
minor indicators.
yeah. So actually, most roofs that fail don't fail because they're leaking, and that's always a big surprise to people. Um, you'll obviously if you have a leak coming through the roof, that may actually just be one location of the roof that's leaking. There may just be one particular bad spot in it as a bad design. Maybe the architect kind of fumbled a particular corner, and the design is just inherently vulnerable to leaks, and that can be repaired. But when roofs fail as a system, as an entire system, it's usually because of ventilation, and um, and that's a very sneaky failure because it creeps up on you. There's never one particular event that tells you your ventilation's bad. It's bad from day one, and then it accumulates until you have maybe mold coming through like the attic hatch. Pop that lid, look inside, and there's like a bathroom vent that's been disconnected. That's been spewing humid air into the attic for 15 years, and then you find out you have no leaks, but your plywood is covered in mold, insulation is covered in mold, and all that has to go. So actually, we're the first roofing company to introduce IoT into that process. So, we talked about being busy. Um, People are not just business owners doing 18 hours a day. Anyone working at Microsoft or Amazon is spread pretty thin too, I'm sure. So, we put humidity sensors in the attic space next to those points of failure. So if there's like a bathroom vent that can become disconnected, we can put a sensor next to that. And if every day we're reporting maybe 40% humidity, and then out of nowhere it goes to 90, we get we detect that anomaly. It goes back to our office, and we find out, hey, sensor five and whatever house has a humidity event. We can go out there, check it out, and see what the problem is before that whole roof system fails. So it's like a check engine light for your house.
Okay. So winter's coming here.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll see like house with like 10, 12 inches of snow on it, like 3, 7 days.
Right.
Does that damage the roof at all? Or is that
Snow load could be a thing, maybe, higher up. And of course, a home should be built with snow load in mind, have a steeper slope. Um, but if it ever became a real big issue, we could take a drone and we could fly above the house, drop like ice melt salt. We could drop that in the roof and melt it. Um, I'm always trying to find ways to bring tech and drones into everything. Like something as simple as a roof, I bring robots into it. I overcomplicate things, I guess, or make it simple, whichever way you want to look at it. But yeah, with snow loads, you could drop
okay?
some salt on there.
So I want to go back to the other company you had.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in business anymore. A company called Vertivolt, the one you had in
Mm.
Belize.
Yeah, yeah,
Can you talk about that?
yeah. So,
And
well,
was that your first startup?
yeah, I
Okay.
started the hardest startup I ever had was my first one, um, which I don't recommend doing. Especially don't have your first startup be in a foreign country. Uh,
Like you said, you like to complicate shit.
Yeah, I do. So the background story to that, I worked in Afghanistan as a sniper for about 7 years or so as a private military contractor. And if your only foreign experience is the Taliban and Al Qaeda, you're going to be a very jaded person. So, going back to finding your opposite and going there, I figured, what's the opposite of the Taliban? What's the opposite of Al Qaeda? It's going to be Rastafarians in Belize, right? So I bought some property down there and uh, lived in a 400 square foot little concrete cabana on the beach. And I met my wife then too, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. She's Canadian, and so we could not just move to America because of the immigration process. I can't just move to Canada. She can't just move to the U.S. So when I finished contracting overseas, I was like, well, I have a little cabana on the island down in Belize. We can just live there for a while. And as any couple in their late 20s would, um, thought it was a great idea. We moved down there, and within 2 weeks, I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do while I'm down here? Because believe it or not, a tropical island does get kind of boring after a while. So so I figured, well, the cost of distance is pretty heavy down there. Gas is like $10 to $12 a gallon. Yeah, and the boats that you take to go down the coast to get food get about 1 mile to a gallon. So we're spending, and the route is about 10 miles. So depending on how many times you stop, whatnot, you're spending anywhere between 120 $200 or more on gas for the boat just to go get groceries. So there's no road connecting where we lived to town, so it was only by boat, and everyone gets by boat or golf cart in some rare occasions. And so, like, all right, well, what if we convert these to be electric? What would it cost? And it came out to $7. Huge difference there. So it was a no-brainer. Like these boats have to become electrified. And of course, there's environmental implications to that too. Two-stroke engines are by far the worst offending engines out there in terms of emissions. Like you can't measure everything with just miles per gallon. You can't just say like, oh well, a motorcycle gets 50 miles to a gallon, therefore it's eco-friendly. There's tons of emissions that come out of a straight pipe motorcycle, for example. So we did the math and figured, all right, well, we can transport people from one end to the next for like $7 in energy. That's one way. We can charge a water taxi full of people, make about $300 per trip, do that 14 times a day. It's good money. And so we had a joint venture with Cat Marine out of South Africa. And through their connections, we had a project going with, let's see, what was the university? It was University of Stellenbosch, South Africa. It's kind of like their maritime university. And South Africa has a lot of great tech still, a lot of good maritime tech. And so we worked with them and another battery company out of Miami. And I put all my money that I saved up from Afghanistan into this project. Single-handedly dug all the charging points because the infrastructure is actually hugely important for an EV startup. You have to have the infrastructure. So that was great. I mean, like pickaxe, shovel, and everything, digging out the trenches for laying cable. And literally about 2 weeks prior to launching, my battery and motor manufacturer called me and said, "Hey, sorry, we're going bankrupt and you're losing your deposits." So overnight, I went from being not rich, but pretty well off to having less than that. And right then, my daughter needed surgery too. Had to pay for surgery, and we tweeted back to the U.S. That was my first time living in the U.S. since like 2006, and this was 2017, 2016. So I came back to the U.S. feeling much like an immigrant. Like I haven't been here in a long time. Like I have the accent. I know which clothes to wear. I know what side of the road to drive on. But beyond that, I don't know how to get around here. I don't recognize my hometown. It's changed. Um, Getting a job is hard because my resume is, sniper. Who's going to hire that, right? And then, EV boat company. that's confusing also to people. So um, it was uh, very humbling to come back here and to go from someone who's making a very healthy 6 figures a year to uh, going on Craigslist looking for random work.
You know what? Totally off subject. That still blows my mind that people find jobs on Craigslist.
Yeah,
Like when I think
it's
Craigslist, I think like shady stuff, notorious stuff,
yeah,
illegal stuff.
it's actually very.
But everyone says it's one of the best places to find jobs
They
to hire
actually,
people.
yeah, Craigslist actually has one of the highest revenues per employee. I think they're like the top three or top
Yeah,
four.
I've heard that.
Yeah,
But this I
and
still blows my mind to this day.
it's phenomenal that they're still around,
Yeah,
or it is still around.
yeah.
I wonder what their HQ looks like.
I don't know.
I don't even know where they're located, but yeah. So I ended up meeting a bunch of there's an ad in the paper for a receptionist at a roofing company.
Mhm,
It's like, sure, I'll take it,
mhm.
whatever. And I go in there and the roofing company's doing pretty bad. They're in a real tough spot. It's in Minnesota, um, and they're heading into the winter. Roofing, as you can imagine, in Minnesota is very quiet come like January. And this company was about to go under. And I went in there and I found just really simple things like hey, they never had your American Express merchant account linked to your bank. So you got like 14 grand just out there in space, not in your
Out in the cloud
yeah.
somewhere,
Yeah. So there's just really easy work. And my boss at the time thought I was
a
like,
superstar.
yeah, and was not
You're the
definitely not.
greatest ever.
Yeah. And I'm just like making sure this is connected to that. And that's all I'm doing. Right. Um, but it was the immigrants that really took a chance on me. And I'll never forget that. So I kind of have a sweet spot in my heart for the veteran immigrant duo. Um, I think because veterans, we going back to how we expect things to change. If you're 28 getting out of the military, you're hungry for a step change. You're not happy with the way things are. That's why you got out of the military probably, and there's a life that you want, right? And you're old enough now. You're 28 or 30 years old. You're old enough to actually have a little bit of wisdom behind your decisions. And immigrants may come here around the same age, and they know that it's on their watch to make a step change in their family. So when you put us both together, um, I think it's a really powerful combination.
That's what immigrants also think they know. They got here, like someone back in the home country sacrificed for them to get here, right? Either
Oh yeah,
someone worked an extra job, like
yeah,
they just pop up coming, right? Something like happened for them to get
oh
here,
yeah,
right? And they probably feel an obligation, like, hey, I gotta make it, or else I'll let my pops or moms or whoever back home like down.
yeah, yeah. So they have obligations to their family, which is a great motivator, of course. And a lot of them, I had some random jobs, in between all these stories I'm telling you. For 2 weeks, I worked down in Texas for I think it was a company called Marine Clean. One of my friends was having this cleaning company and needed someone just to kind of manage it for a week or two. I went down there, and the people who were working as janitors, like actual janitors, they were attorneys in Venezuela.
That's the one thing I don't
So
understand. I see the reason for it, but you hear all the time, like, yeah, this guy from the country of India had a PhD in engineering and
yeah,
whatever. Now
yeah,
he's like a fucking fry cook.
yeah, yeah.
I,
So and that's the thing. Like you don't know what kind of greatness is actually um, existing in that person you're talking to, and you don't know that unless you're like you're in sales or take the time to actually talk to someone. But when you're in the trades, it becomes increasingly obvious that a guy working with his hands with some calluses, for all you know, he has a degree in computer programming, and by because of the circumstances of where he is in life right now, he's putting a roof on. So for me, it's a great way to have really high caliber people that are very intelligent to be on your team. And it's great about that because when we're pairing technology with the labor force, we have a problem where how do we match someone who's competent enough to troubleshoot a robot, but humble enough to do blue collar work?
yeah, I think that seemed like that'd be a hard match to make.
It's very hard, and it's funny because I thought, oh, now that I have robots working for me, I won't need as many people. Well, now I need a very special person. So I'm actually kind of painted into a corner where now I need someone who's intelligent enough to troubleshoot a robot, or to think like have a problem like, oh, we were charging the robot off the truck, turn the truck off, left the alternator on or the inverter on. Now the truck is dead, but the robot works. Okay, how do we get the robot to jump the truck? You know, those kinds of things. But then have someone intelligent enough to think that way, because I'm unavailable. I might be like in Ukraine or something, right? They have to think of a way to overcome this problem without calling anybody, but then have the humility to get on a ladder and do the last 10% of the job because the robots just can't do it for whatever reason.
So, Drew, talk about some of the lessons you learned from your first startup that helped you be successful this time around.
Oh, big one. So do not quit your day job. Always have a source of income. If you have a source of income while you're doing your startup, you don't have a runway. And that runway will put you in a situation where you have to make some some terrible decisions that may be not incredibly necessary if you have an income. Um, and you may be working a little slower, and you may end up having to go back to that 18-hour day thing we were talking about, um, trying to avoid that. But the biggest mistake I made was giving up my job, which was six figures, working in Afghanistan, and then doing the startup. I could have done like most of my work, most of the feasibility studies, a lot of the negotiations, a lot of that stuff. I could have done that remotely from Afghanistan, and I should have. And other things like don't spend 2 weeks in your logo. No one really cares.
Yeah, right here, right here.
Yeah, don't. No one cares. They're gonna forget about it. Go to any of my competitors or even my customers who we did a roof for. Ask them who did the roof. They won't tell you the name of the company. They'll say, "Oh, uh, Paco did," or "Andrew did." They remember you, not the logo or the company. And unless you're of course like Apple,
Yeah.
you know that it changes. But no one cares about the logo. Um, um, yeah. So don't spend time on the logo. Just give yourself a day, maybe. If you're successful, you can always hire someone later to make a cooler logo if you want. Um, and and stay quiet. You don't need to boast about what you're doing, especially in tech. I think tech is very um, has a bad rep of saying what they're about to do or saying what they can do. You have to be result driven and product led, especially in tech, because there's no way to, well, especially in roofing. If you're not the best, someone's going to know. You can't fake a good roof, you know. So um, I don't know. There's really no shortcuts. You just have to be legit. You have to be the real deal.
So earlier you used the phrase eco-friendly. What does that mean? Does it mean like you're a tree hugger?
Oh,
Does that mean like you want clean air and clean
oh,
water for everyone?
eco-friendly. I'm an environmentalist, so that would mean that everyone disagrees with what I have to say. You know, so the environmentalists, actually the biggest challenge I had in Belize and on the eco-friendly startup was other environmentalists. Um, and I try to stay away from the politics of it all. But usually, what you find is if you want to actually solve an environmental problem, you have to think of it like, okay, I want to have the maximum environmental benefit with the least amount of inconvenience in people's lifestyles. So if you think of it like inconvenience on the y-axis and environmental benefit on the x, we have situations where like you may get rid of like straws, right? And for whatever reason, that really bothers people a lot, but the environmental impact of that is just nothing, right? Next to nothing. Or you could have a product that actually improves people's lives, um, and have an environmental impact. And there's not enough to be done there. There's like two-stroke engines, for example, something like lawn appliances. Uh, I don't have the data in front of me, but um, comes down to if you have someone that has like a two-stroke powered lawnmower and a two-stroke powered leaf blower and a weed whacker, whatever else, and they drive a Prius, that person will have a higher carbon footprint than someone who has electric versions of that but drives a Ford Raptor. So um, environmentalists tend to really look at things in a weird lens. Well, I don't understand why they're going after things that really disrupt people's daily lives so much, but have very little environmental benefit.
Yeah, back to paper straws. I remember this. it got passed in Seattle a long time ago, and it was a meme going out where the Seattle councilman said, "Hey, look, we got rid of plastic straws."
Mhm.
He was talking to like four homeless people shooting up drugs,
Yeah.
and like the and
Right.
like
Yeah.
this is what you focus on, like paper straws. Like, how does this do anything for anyone?
Yeah. And that's why I went after the whole boat idea, because I came up with math, like one electric boat would actually offset the carbon emissions of about 800 SUVs. And that's going to be $100,000 per boat. And that's a huge thing because when you're dealing with two-stroke engines mix the oil and the fuel together. But when they combust, the oil is not combusted like the fuel is. The oil is released uncombusted through the exhaust into the ocean. So about 10 to 20% of that fuel mixture is oil like on the reef system. So it doesn't matter like if someone's thinking global warming is us or not, or if it's natural or not. We all know what happens when you take oil and you dump it on the reef system. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So my goal is like avoid the politics, attack a problem that everyone is aware of. We all know what happens to reefs when you dump oil on it. Um, make a lot of money doing it because you have to be a capitalist about this. I can't just ask for grants and just live off government subsidies. I have to be a cutthroat capitalist and show that you can be an environmentalist and a capitalist at the same time. And that was the goal. Um, going back to mistakes though, I think I was a little bit early. Battery technology back in 2013 was not at all what it is today, not at all. Um, and that is a huge limiting factor, especially in the maritime sector, because pushing a boat through water, this is where being a sniper comes in handy because we all know about pushing a bullet through air. Uh, we have the same problems as pushing a boat through water, right? And pushing a boat through water, it's like pushing an SUV loaded with people, tires flat in the sand. And so everything you can do to make that haul more efficient has a cascading effect on the battery life, the battery size, your profit, all kinds of things. So the haul is everything. Just like in long range shooting, the bullet is far more important than the gun.
Yeah, back to environment fast. Like me, like I believe everyone should have like quick access to clean air, clean water, whatever.
Right.
But do I want to go back to the year 1750? Was there no hot water? Could use a bathroom outside?
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want to. So like a lot of environmentalists like want to do that, right? And then yeah, and then like let's suppose like you want to build 1,000 homes for people, right?
Hmm.
But there's like some kind of rodent. Those are 100 left. They'll stop the building the houses because there's one rodent on
Right. Right.
I'm not saying like I don't want to like kill off any kind of species, but like what's
Yeah.
the trade off, right? Are we gonna like really stop development for this one animal?
Yeah. There's that. There's of course some animals that really deserve some protection.
Yeah,
Cats,
yeah,
salmon, of course.
yeah.
Um, cascading effects on that. But we do need. I think what environmentalists lack is like building experience. They need to have a better conversation with the actual trades because there's a number of houses that are built to high energy specs on it, and really like insulation or energy efficiency. Really, all that really is it's a Yankee word for keeping air stable. Right, I got that from a sniper instructor down in Texas. Um, he would always say like whatever fancy scientific word that is, that's a Yankee word for whatever word he would use. But energy efficiency is going to be keeping air from moving, insulation. Air not moving in the Northwest is mold. And so there's a lot of homes that are energy efficient, but have problems that have to have the entire thing gutted, removed, and tossed. So, and you can go to, uh, you know, various transfer stations, dump stations, and just go there in the morning or on the noon, around noon, and look at just the sheer amount of building material that's taking up all these spaces. Like people's personal garbage is nothing compared to the amount of building debris we have out there because of um, failed ventilation systems or failed roofing systems. That takes up probably 30 to 40% of the entire volume. I have actually asked them that before. I'm like, how much of the stuff is actually construction debris from remodels? Um, Close to half. And a lot of that comes from um, trapped air. Trapped air, moist air leads to mold. It's got to get gutted. and get replaced. So, so you have to wonder like, well, if this particular material is eco-friendly, like, is it eco-friendly if it has to get torn out and thrown in the dump every 10 years? So they just need to have a better conversation with the actual trades and the architects also.
Yeah, this is another question I have. For lack of a better term, like the hardcore environmentalists, right? It's like they
Mhm.
always say the human race is destroying the world. There's no way we can come back.
Mhm.
I could be wrong, but wasn't ozone layer like half gone, and that was like pretty much like 95% back because we got rid of chloroforms or something?
I think it came back. And actually, I haven't read about that in a while, so I can't speak intelligently about it. But I do recall reading at least a headline recently that the Earth, I think, is like 10% greener now than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And there's kind of a mixed bag because it's greener. Yes, it is greener, but it's largely because of more agriculture.
yeah,
So it's not like the rainforest grew back.
mhm,
It's more like, well, we have more vegetation.
yeah,
So, well, more agricultural output, some more plants in that regard. So, I'm not sure. The story is still developing on that.
yeah. And this is some of my ignorance, right? So like some people say the war's been around since billions of years. Other people who read the Bible say 6,000.
Oh
But,
yeah,
but
yeah.
regardless, we say, isn't it kind of like egotistical for us to say as humans we would like destroy the planet in like 100 years when it's been around like thousands of years? Have we made that much of an impact to oil and gas and stuff?
If we would have an impact,
Or
um,
like, well, really, can we really destroy something that's been around that long?
I don't know. Honestly, I
Mhm.
don't know. I would hope not.
This is kind of egotistical. I
Right?
think that we as a human race can like
Yeah.
destroy the whole earth, and 100 years is a relatively short amount of time, even if you compare to 6,000 years.
Yeah. Well, I am curious. We obviously do have, say climate change or global warming. I am curious if we can determine how much of that is us.
Yeah,
And it's a moving target. The problem though is that every time that data is updated, people are want to jump on that particular data
yeah.
to reinforce their
And
position
like,
on
how do you
this.
prove your case either way? Like, how do you prove like we're destroying it, or how do you prove like no, it's a Earth cycle every billion years this happens, right? Like,
Right.
how do you prove that? You can't.
Well, I
At least I
think
don't think you can.
yeah, and so I think as an environmentalist and entrepreneur, you want to tackle things that aren't up for debate, that do have a good environmental impact. So like going back to the ocean, for example, like we know we need salmon. We know that we need a healthy ocean.
Mm.
We know we need reef systems. We know that we need that, and we know what happens to it when we dump gasoline. So that to me is a no-brainer. I've never heard someone say, um, "Oh, it's totally fine to dump oil into the ocean."
Yeah, no,
I have not heard that at all.
no.
Um, Other things are up for debate. So I think that's kind of why I would much rather see environmentalists go after the low-hanging fruit that's not political and have a huge environmental benefit, um, rather than going after the things that could be very political, very very political, and have almost zero environmental benefit. So that's kind of in the past.
Mm.
I The way geopolitics have shifted, I'm probably more focused on, um, I guess, entrepreneurialism
Uh-huh.
in defense tech.
Yeah,
But the background in batteries, the background in BMS and managing heat, managing something going through the water, keeping it efficient, that has had it's given me definitely an advantage going into the drone sector because I've been following the battery tech sector for over a decade now. So um, it's been a really good foundation for that.
next, let's switch to your time as a sniper. So
Yeah,
you a sniper in the U.S. Army,
yeah. So this is the interesting thing. I was
and it
in
was
the
4 years, right?
Yeah, so I did 4 years in the Army from 2002 to 2006, and I was in the Scout Platoon, 3rd Battalion, 504, 82nd. And um, even though I was in the Army, I was lucky enough to actually go to the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School in Camp Lejeune, Stone Bay in
But that's like the top of
2005.
the top sniper schools,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes. And by far, even today, the most academically intense course, even compared to college.
talk about that real fast. I think most people, most average Americans have no experience with guns. They think, oh, you just go out, point a gun. There's actually like a science to it, right? I mean,
Oh
really
yeah,
technical, like
definitely,
the
absolutely.
so many, like you can actually, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if the one of you actually get a PhD in like
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
Oh well, you could, PhD in ballistics. It's as complicated as you want it to be. Of course, the guys that are designing the rifles and designing the bullets, have done enough engineering, so by the time it goes down to the soldier or the Marine, it's a finished product, and they're not having to do a whole lot of tinkering with it. But if you do want to go beyond what the military can do in terms of precision with a rifle, then absolutely it can be a whole new hobby, whole new profession, and you're going to have to be pretty well versed in physics on that. So, but yeah, sniper school was by far the most academically intense course I had ever been in. And it was funny, I always struggled with math, even in high school. But once I got to sniper school, algebra just clicked. Because there was always a good use case, a good explanation of
Okay.
this is why the formula is written the way it
So
is.
in high school, you didn't have the use case, it wasn't connected. Now you have your connection that kind of clicked.
Right. Well, yeah, my analogy is kind of like, well, sniper school gives you a chance to understand an equation in an intuitive sense. And we're all capable of calculus. It's just that some of us are just doing it without thinking. Like if I threw you a ball right now, you would know at what point, time and space to catch it, right?
Yeah.
But if I gave you the equation for it, you might look at it for a while,
Yeah.
right? So, but when you can teach it with an actual physical use case, it clicks. So, for example, you know, I teach my own kids this, like an exponent in this case would be like a twig near your barrel. If your bullet hits a twig an inch from the barrel, that trajectory is affected exponentially as the bullet moves. So that's why if we're building a formula on variables affecting the trajectory of a bullet, uh, those kinds of things would be an exponent. That's why we put it in the exponent particular place. So um, it was it was a great school. It opened a lot of doors because to be working in the private military sector, they don't take anybody. So that you have to be like where I worked, you had to be um, prior Ranger, maybe Marine Force Recon, SEAL, SF, or sniper. And if you don't have that on your resume, you're not going to get that.
So, so as a sniper, how do you deal with like being on the mission, laying down for days at a time, nothing going
I
on?
love it.
Did you play mental games yourself or like?
Oh, you get to know yourself pretty well,
Mm.
because you're going to have you're just stuck there looking like a rock for 3 days, So you have to be okay just being by yourself for an extended period of time and those around you. Um, so you kind of have different personalities go into that particular field. You'll have one personality that might go into the weapon squad or the machine gun teams. You'll have another personality kind of drift into the world of being a sniper. And so those guys are usually they tend to be uh, less normal. I think the better way to say it, but they're a little more academic, a little more on the geeky side. They enjoy the science behind accuracy, and they tend to be very independent because not only are you working by yourself, but you're also providing information and intelligence to a battalion commander who outranks you by several ranks. And so you have to be someone who's 22 years old or 20 years old, speaking intelligently to um, a battalion commander, a lieutenant colonel, and giving them the information that they need to make the right decision for the follow-on assault or the follow-on objective. So, so you have to be confident in the information you provide. You have to be objective in that. You have to be able to convince people who outrank you to trust you, because at the end of the day, you're going to be a team of 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds 6 miles forward of anyone who can help you. And you have to trust those young men to do the right thing in your absence. So there's a lot of trust that has to be established for a sniper team to be effective.
As a sniper, how do they determine if you're successful like that? And if you can't answer this, that's fine. But
Oh,
is it tracked on like do successfully has like certain number of kills, a number of hits, or like
no.
anything like that? How does snipers?
Well, the movies will talk about the kills. Um, uh, and I think in popular culture we rank snipers, or we see snipers as almost like uniformed assassins and whatnot. But a good sniper team never has to shoot. We're basically just collecting data forward of the main force. And so a good sniper is, in my opinion, Well, first of all, it's good reconnaissance, good surveillance, and you measure your success based on the accuracy of the data you can provide your battalion commander to make the right call. And your whole job is to see things no one else will see, and to be able to see um, uh, one thing and extract the full meaning out of that, whereas someone else will just see that, oh, that's maybe that's a canteen, that's nothing. um, or maybe we'll see like an armored personnel carrier, and to us we'll understand there's never just one. That's probably a battalion of armored personnel, and that means there's at least a battalion here, for example, where another soldier might see an armored personnel carrier, and it's just one. So
Do you happen to know like how many on average how many snipers are in the U.S. military on any
not
given day?
many,
Not
not
many.
many. I mean, I don't know how it is nowadays, but when I went through, it was not uncommon for a class of maybe 20 snipers to start, might graduate four. Um, I know one guy who was a sniper instructor, and he graduated zero, and he failed everybody in his class, 100%. And some classes you'll get, 18 graduates, maybe 80% will pass. It all depends on how well those students are prepared. Um, you basically can't go to sniper school and learn how to be a sniper. You already have to know how to do it from your unit, and then you go there to demonstrate that you know what you know.
Is there some type of making this up, some type of U.S. military sniper alumni program where all your snipers from the past get together and
Yeah,
this what we're doing now?
yeah, there's enough of us, or there's few of us for us to know like who's legit or not. Like if someone says, "Oh, hey, if you know so and so," he says he's a sniper. If I don't have him on my LinkedIn, if he's not at least 2 degrees away from someone I know, it's not true.
Okay.
It's not true. There's maybe at any given moment probably 300 active snipers in the Marine Corps, even less now because they discontinued the 0341 8541 MOS. Um, and in the Army, there's probably a similar amount. Um, and we're talking school trained snipers. There's people who actually will have the job as a sniper, but they've never been to the actual sniper school. That gets a little bit confusing. But school trained, maybe the Army will have maybe 600 active working as a sniper and school trained. Marine Corps, I don't know what it is nowadays after they deleted that course, but maybe 300.
Yeah, that's still crazy to me. That you told me yesterday that the Marines get rid of the sniper or whatever.
Yeah,
They're like that's blows my mind away.
it does. It does. And the snipers have always had kind of a rough relationship with um larger military organizations because we are we are kind of a subculture, I guess you could say. Um and it kind of comes down to just the daily life of garrison duty. In garrison duty, you'll have a battalion of infantry doing the everyday things of working out in the morning, and then maybe cleaning weapons for 3 or 4 hours, and then just kind of doing their infantry things throughout the day, which is probably not a whole lot. The sniper teams, the scout teams will be out in the woods, and we're going to be out of sight, out of mind, training and doing things, brushing up on like land nav, train association, trying to get range time. So you really get those individuals they take warfare very seriously. The guy who sent me to sniper school, his name is Jason, and he was a phenomenal leader. To this day, with the best leader I've ever had in the military. And he taught the the art of long range precision rifle fire as almost a martial art. So we took it very seriously, where other guys were maybe like just trying to get out of the military after a couple of years in.
So when you go on a sniper mission, like how do you decide how much food to take? Like you take 3 meals, 3 MREs, or you take as minimum amount as
Oh,
possible.
well, so in Iraq, I packed very, very light. And I packed light because my tactic was this is actually just before we had the surge, before we transitioned tactics in Iraq. And just before we got there, the army was still staying in huge bases, right? LSA Anaconda, Camp Ripper was, I think, the Marine Corps base. And they would go out and patrol, do a presence patrol, and then come back. But they would presence patrol through a town or a city, full throttle in the Humvee, just flying down a road and coming back. And there was,
with the headlights on.
yeah, and they would have just no interaction with the Iraqi population. Um, our unit was very different, where we were kind of pioneering, or we were the test monkeys of General Petraeus's new tactic
Yeah.
of being embedded with the population, and that was amazing. So we would pack light on food because we would end up at people's houses having lunch with them, dinner with them. I don't have it with me, but I have photos of us sitting in living rooms or great rooms with elders of the family watching Saddam's trial, and my armor is off, um, and we're having baklava with that particular family, um, and it's almost going back to the whole sales thing. You never know who you're going to meet in these situations. I was in one house. The father of the family was a University of History at or a professor of history at University of Baghdad, completely fluent in English. And I was there for 3 days, and we talked about everything from Socrates to Plato to World War II to Al Qaeda in Iraq, Sarkawi, 9/11, and we had these conversations, these real deep conversations, over a 3 day period. And um, those conversations is what really turned the tide, I think. And it goes back to command trusting the E3s, the E4s, and E5s to go out there into the population and engage in conversation and actually squeeze a victory out of that situation. So for me, some snipers will talk about maybe how many kills they had or whatever. For me, the success was how many people told me that you're the first American I've ever spoken to, or you're the first squad of infantry I've had a conversation with after 2 years of warfare, the first ones, and putting a human face on that, and realizing that I had one family, and I'll never forget this. We took over this house because this house was overlooking a road that was being used for um, a roadside bomb placement. I think like 14 IEDs had gone off, and like 2 weeks prior to this. And get to this house, and there was there was a room with about a third of the wall missing. Something huge had crashed through it. And talking to this man, come to find out, one morning his kids were walking to school, and an IED went off that the insurgents were trying to target an American convoy. That IED hit the American convoy, but also killed one of his kids going to school. American convoy returned fire and where they thought that triggerman would be. So you have 3 types of enemy locations. You have known locations, you have suspected locations, you have likely locations. So I think they just shot some bursts, some rounds into known, suspected, likely locations. And that happened to be the corner of his house where he had another child there also. So in a matter of what could have been 10 seconds, this man lost one child to the insurgents, and one child to American. And you got to think like, what does a guy do in a situation like that? And that was a really hard conversation. Imagine being 21 years old and talking to someone who had gone through that.
Yeah, it's tough.
But the conversation we had was something to the effect of, regardless of what happens, whatever policies our nations have towards each other, you and I are in this AO together, and you and I have to have our own policy of what happens now. Are we going to get rid of these insurgents putting these bombs in the roads, or are we going to tolerate this as a normal thing that is? And I think it was those conversations between the infantry and Iraqis that started to change things, and that gathered momentum. Those conversations led to Sunni awakening, and eventually a split in support between the Sunni tribes and Al Qaeda. And so, being a successful sniper, I think, was actually having a lot of conversation with Iraqis, a lot, to the point now where my life was saved by an Iraqi boy. I was walking down the road, and there was a bomb that I was totally oblivious to, and it was a trash bag with some kind of white phosphorus munition stuffed inside a water bottle with a straw coming out, and out of that straw was the antenna. And I'd pride myself being a sniper. I can spot anything, right? I have a trained observer. I'm supposed to see these kinds of things, and I was totally blind to it. But it was a child, call him a child, he's probably 12 years old, came out of his shop and pulled me out of the way. It was saying it was a bomb. So had we not, this is a very long way of answering how much food I took. I bought food from that store, and we would pack lightly because we would try to get our food and our resupply from the local population as much as possible. One, it improves our interaction with the local population. It stimulates the economy to some degree because we're actually paying for stuff. They see us as not just an occupier, but as an actual customer. But even more importantly, the logistics back on the fobs aren't having to resupply us with every gallon of water we need, every MRE we need. We can sustain ourselves to a degree, at least out in the population.
Do you still keep up your sniper skills?
I try. I'm gonna go shoot probably in a couple weeks.
Okay.
I got a new 300 Win Mag. I'm gonna go try out. Um, it's hard around here, 'cause, in the Northwest, you don't have a whole lot of open range.
Yeah.
There's trees everywhere.
Unless you go to Eastern Washington.
Yeah, that's where we'll have to go. So Central Washington, Eastern Washington is kind of where we'll go. For me, it's very therapeutic. It's
What's the farthest target you've ever hit?
depends on the rifle.
Okay.
I would say with the U.S. Army's M24, 800 meters comfortably,
Okay.
and then it'll give you the best ammo also. It's not like you're a sniper, you get to go pick your ammo, pick your rifle, pick your optic. You're given what they give you, and that's it.
Okay.
So, but when you have your own stuff, your own selection, now you can go beyond them. It gets much easier.
And so don't answer this if you don't want to, but like, how often do snipers, or did you think about once you got out of snipers out of the army, like becoming like a professional hitman, a professional sniper, like the mafia or some other, illegal organization?
I think we're all pretty immune to that. Because I think when we're selecting people who goes to sniper school, it's not like some officers just like, pulling some numbers and like,
Mhm.
okay, this guy's going to be a sniper. You really have to.
They do the due diligence and the
Oh
character, that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah. Like you graduate that school being very, very powerful, and we want to be sure that we're giving that information to people
So if
that
somebody's
we
got an
can
Article
trust.
15, they're probably not going to go to sniper
Oh,
school.
not a chance.
Okay.
Not a chance. So like if you have a battalion of infantry, you may have like 840 guys there, 850, maybe 900. I forget what it is nowadays, but let's just call it 800. You'll have one platoon of the scout platoon, which is going to be anywhere between maybe 16 or 24 guys. And those guys are going to be handpicked out of that whole battalion. And of those, you'll have 3 squads. And of those 3 squads, you'll have one person, maybe, that's a school trained sniper. And so you have to go through a lot of handpicked selection processes to have a chance to go. And then that's just a chance to go to the school. So you're pulling a few people out of thousands upon thousands to go to the school. And when you get to the school, they may be like, I don't like your attitude.
Yeah.
Fail. So
I just wonder, like, how many of these like criminal organizations, like, hey, we need a assassin. Let's go to the U.S. Army Sniper School. They're already trained.
yeah,
Throw a lot of money at them.
yeah, I haven't met anyone that I think would be even close to being.
Tempted, so to speak.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Um, very, very high standards. And I think it's almost like that particular community has to be hyper professional because of the skill that they have, and they have to be as objective as possible also. So that's why people are always asking me my political opinion. I don't roger that up
Yeah.
much at all.
Yeah.
Just because of mostly out of respect to my profession, because I'm kind of the ambassador. When people meet me, I'm probably the first and only sniper they'll ever meet.
Yeah.
So so I have to be the ambassador
Yeah. Because
and leave the
there's not a lot of people with a word sniper on their LinkedIn profile.
right. And so, I kind of go back and forth. I could bury that and maybe people are kind of freaked out by that and I shouldn't say it, but I think it's important to put a face on the profession. And um, and just show the difference between a trained professional sniper and how we see the world versus how Hollywood makes us out to be.
Next, let's switch to Ukraine. So after the war in Ukraine started, you actually went there in person and did some stuff, right? Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. So RoofTec building robots and building drones. Um, Leading up to the war, I've learned to kind of trust like my sixth sense for conflict. Um, we talked about this yesterday. You know, every 10 years something kicks off, it seems to be. And when I was watching the Russians start to move troops around the first time, they had, I think it was a year prior to that, they had some movement on the border, and it made sense they may invade. So I was kind of following Ukraine about a year prior to the invasion, and when they started moving troops again, and I read a report somewhere, it was some open source intel report showing they actually had um, they moved their medical units to the front or to the border, and they actually had blood on standby. That's the indicator. No one brings blood uh, on a training
Or for
on
an
a training ground. Does
exercise?
not happen, especially Russia. We know it's going to kick off. And then I figured, well, the terrain there is pretty mucky and fall. I think they call it the Black Winter. And so I figured, all right, well, they're going to invade. They're going to do it maybe 2 3 days after the ground freezes. So I was watching the weather. Just turn off the news, watching the weather, and sure enough, after a few good days of frozen ground, they kicked it off. And so at that point, I had a roofing company that could build uh, some pretty heavy payload drones, carry 8 pounds easily, 10 pounds easily, and a lot of munitions weigh less than 10 pounds. And yeah, the war kicked off, and I called up some of my friends, some bunch of guys that used to work for or work with us over in Afghanistan. Dare I say, ex Blackwater guys, which by the way, the most professional group I've ever worked with. Different story, but we kind of saw it coming, and I figured, well, we don't know how long Ukraine will last against this invasion force they have on the border. This will probably be an insurgent war, and so we went over there. I went over there primarily to teach them the opposite side of what I've been fighting. We were the coalition force. We were the big army going up an insurgency, and I have spent so much time combating an insurgency. I knew pretty well how an insurgency can disrupt a larger force like the
Did you have
Russians.
to get permission from the U.S. government, any kind of way to go over there, or you just went?
No, just went, and you got to be careful because you have to, make sure nothing is ITAR sensitive, so you're not exporting. Um, Crazy things can be ITAR. Even if you
So
brought,
what is ITAR?
it's basically the trade regulation that regulates what you can bring out of the country.
Okay.
So you can't bring, like, obviously a rifle. You can't bring a thermal camera if it's for military. You can't bring anything over that's a military related item. Um, but nowadays that line is so blurred now. Um,
Now, so when you're over there, you're basically on your own. Like, suppose you get, taken a prisoner of war, so quote. You really can't depend on the U.S. government to do anything for you, right? You're pretty much like
Probably
on your
not.
own, right?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah. And the intent wasn't really to go there and get into a firefight. The intent, well, we didn't really know what would happen when we got there. We just knew we had to go. And it was funny. So I packed up what I could bring legally, just some drone propellers, some practice drones, nothing too crazy. And we had a route planned. I won't say where it was or where we gained access to the
So
country.
real quick, so how do you get there? I guess you flew from Seattle to New York, New York to Poland, crossed the
Uh,
border from Poland,
yeah,
Ukraine.
I won't say our avenue, but we got onto a country that was bordering
Okay.
Ukraine, in a very unlikely avenue, because I figured, like, I was expecting the Russians to be as good at war as everyone thought.
Mhm.
So like, don't have a phone, keep your phone off, Faraday bag, um, don't go through the normal points of entry, and you got to be smart about this. We didn't know what to expect, so we just basically had this idea, like, pretend the Russians are as capable as the American military, and go about your
Nothing's a good
business.
avenue to have.
Yeah, just assume that
Like, never underestimate anyone.
well, in sniper school, we have a saying that you're always under observation. Always assume you're being watched. Always. So we did this just assuming that everyone knows where we're going. We're assuming that they're watching our Facebook profiles and everything. right? So complete radio silent. Um, we get to the border, and our point of entry was hilarious. We get to customs, Ukrainian customs, and it's manned by the military. And so this woman there in her Ukrainian military uniform is looking at us. There's two of us, and at this point, it's kind of obvious like we have some kind of military background because you could just kind of know by looking at someone. And we show up. We have like three big tough boxes, Pelican cases, and they pop it open and they see like a bunch of drum parts. They see um, wire cutters, soldering kits, um, everything the builders own or whatever else. And they look at us and they're like, "So you here to kill Russians?" And we knew that Russians do have some friends probably on the border. Like again, we're always being watched, and you don't know who you're talking to. But we couldn't just say no. It was quite obvious, our given our age and our build, why we were there. And said, well, just maybe one or two. And the lady laughed. She's like, next time you bring more weapons next time. So it was the first time. Usually you go through customs, and usually it's like, oh, if you have a Bob Marley shirt on, you're being stopped now because you might have some drug paraphernalia.
Yeah.
And now it's the opposite. You go to Ukraine, and um, they're mad at you because you didn't bring guns.
Yeah.
Like, well, you can't do that, right? But the attitude was more like bring us everything, because this is so new in the war, so early on, that no one knew if Ukraine would be around.
Yeah, everyone thought, yeah, this is a
Yeah,
game over within 1 or 2 months. Like, I
exactly.
remember all the pundits on TV, the political people, like, yeah, how is the post-Russian-Ukraine war going to be when Russia controls Ukraine? Can we stop them from going to Poland? Like,
Yeah,
with Putin being emboldened, all this kind of stuff, right?
yeah, that would have been a disaster, because Russia would have gained about 35 million more people in the population, and that's some serious biomass.
So talk about this real fast. We'll go back to Ukraine fast. Like,
Sure.
I just think Putin overestimated, right? Can you think, suppose Putin invaded Ukraine because he wanted to stop Ukraine from going on NATO, but because he did that, like Finland joined, all the other countries joined,
Yeah.
and increased the border of NATO like by 10 times more if it just let Ukraine join.
Are you asking like why did we think he invaded, or?
No, like why do you think he overestimated, right? Like, I
um
mean, because it's like an error, right?
yeah, it's culture, right? It's culture in an organization. If you have a culture of people telling you yes, and are so afraid to tell you bad information, you're never going to get the right information. That's true with any company.
Yeah.
If you expect people to tell you what you want to hear all the time, you're just going to hear what you want to hear. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Like, how see people spend that now? These yes people, right? Hey, we're fighting Ukraine now. We haven't won. Oh, by the way, Finland joined NATO. Sweden
yeah,
joined NATO.
yeah,
This country joined NATO.
yeah.
Like,
He got the opposite of what he wanted, but at the same time, people will often say that it was the presence of NATO, it was the threat of NATO that made him do this. I think it was the exact opposite.
mhm.
Um, I think Putin saw weakness. He knew that our defense sector was gutted, especially post Afghanistan. He knew that Europe can't produce an artillery shell,
Yeah.
just can't. And um, in a way, he was right about their inability to have a good industrial base for a prolonged conflict. He's right about that. But he was very wrong about his own military. And
Yeah.
what's
So
bad though
wrong.
is that the world doesn't know. They know the Russian military is bad, but it's what's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? You have to be good enough at something to know how bad you are at it. And it's almost like there's no one, even in the pundits and even the figureheads of talking heads in the media, know enough about war or know enough about what our military can actually do to know just how bad
Yeah. How about this yesterday when the Ukraine war first started out? There was a
yeah.
general went on TV and said, I'm getting in trouble for this. The person on the news said, asked the general, retired general, how's the army, Russian army so bad? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but the Russian army is nothing more than Vermont National Guard with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. If I mean, if those nukes even work right now.
Yeah.
Because um, you know, there's a certain level of professionalism that you need to have to make things fly.
Mhm.
Like you can have a pretty poor culture in terms of like quality control and maintenance and still get a T-72 to work. Right. It's a very forgiving machine.
Mhm.
ICBMs are not forgiving
Oh.
piece of
Pretty
information.
precise.
Yeah, you have to be the real deal. You have to have a culture that maintains this stuff, a culture that allows um, problems to be brought to the surface without consequence. Um, the aviation as a sector, whether it's missiles or just airplanes or drones, there's no room for faking it. You're gonna know that you're gonna crash out of the sky. Whereas the Russian military as a culture is built around very forgiving platforms. AK-47s are very forgiving platform, T-72. But there's a culture shift when you go into ICBMs, you go into nukes. It requires a culture of precision to make sure that stuff works at all times. And I'm not confident they have the culture or the mindset to maintain that this long.
So back to your Ukraine experience. Go
Yeah.
back to that real fast. Like, what was the preface of going to Ukraine?
With Ukraine is, well, people often ask me like, well, what are you? Are you a soldier? Are you in the military anymore? And the term we came up with is that we're barnacles on the hull of international conflict, right? And we're just kind of along for the ride. My intent was to give Ukraine a fighting chance, to do what I could with whatever tools I had to give them a fighting chance, because I truly believe and still do believe that if we can prevent the Russians from being successful, we can at least delay or prevent whatever was supposed to come next. And so that's hugely important. I think if you have kids that are um, 5 years away from joining, um, it's important to understand that this right now might be 1936 right now.
Mhm.
Um, it's you cannot take peace for granted. So my intent was to give them the knowledge to remain a thorn in the side of the occupation. And it was funny because the first drone we brought over there was actually meant to be a reloadable drone. Um, that's what I'm working on now, different company. But we were never able to find the right ammo for it or the right munitions for it. So the drones we brought over to the test as like training aids, these were not meant to be weaponized at all. They were just training aids. Um, we only had like 2 days left of my trip before coming back to the U.S. and talking to the Ukrainian military. Like, all right, well, we can't find the munitions for the big stuff. Let's just make these small ones kamikazes. Like, sure, we can do that, but they're gone forever after that, and I don't know how you're going to find more of these. And this is how early in the war it was, right? And so they strapped them on, worked with some Ukrainian EOD, and they had a hard time getting them to detonate because it's still early in the war. Getting things to be as reliably lethal as it is reliably safe is a true um, a problem to be sorted out with those early drones. And they were having to balance between like, okay, do we make it just so unstable that it bounces into anything and goes off, or do we have some kind of safety feature where it needs to hit something at a particular angle and a particular way for it to go off? They were kind of working on that, but it was funny because we left the country thinking the mission was kind of a failure because we're like, well, what do we do? We just kind of give them this idea of a drone that just blows up when it hits something, and just kept quiet about it. And I started working on things that I thought would be the next generation of that. And then over the next month or two, other people started coming out of the woodwork saying they kind of did the same thing, um, or saying they're the first ones to ever do it or whatever. And no one's ever the first in anything really, but um, that that morphed into a pretty serious weapon, and it closed an important gap in the Ukrainian military capability. Um, they didn't have the artillery systems they needed to fend off armored assaults, and so the drones uh, really filled that gap. So yeah, we walked away thinking it was kind of a mission failure, but in retrospect, it was a huge success.
And your paying falls out of pocket, or people
All out of
donating
pocket.
money to you?
All out of pocket.
Okay.
Yeah, there may be some people who are like, "Oh, here's some money for some propellers or whatever." Um, and we try to stay away from that just because, you know, I don't know what I don't know in terms of like taking a donation
Mhm.
or taking money from someone and then sending it to someone who may use it for what we think is a good purpose. That gets kind of gray.
And how many times have you been there altogether?
Just once.
That you only went the one
Yeah,
time?
yeah,
Okay.
just once.
And how long you were there for?
About 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
But that's a short time. Were you there? What did you learn about the Ukraine military or Ukraine people?
Their cities are beautiful.
I've always said Ukraine is like the most beautiful place in the world.
Yeah, you can't beat the train of the Northwest, but the cities are phenomenal. And it was very humbling because you go to a country like Odessa, for example, which was being rocketed while we were there. But the streets, I know you had the mayor of Bellevue on recently, but um, the streets are nicer than ours. A lot nicer. A lot nicer. I didn't see one tent. I didn't see, and I drove all around. It's not like I was in the best parts. I was all over the place. And I saw no bad part of town. Um, I saw no signs of crime. The only graffiti I saw was a painting, a perfect painting of the Mona Lisa. It's the only graffiti that I saw. And so I was really impressed by how well they uh, kept care of their infrastructure and their buildings, even while in an actual prolonged conflict. So really impressed by them.
So Russia's communist. What kind of country is that government is Ukraine? Are they democratic, communist, something else?
It depends who you ask.
Or corrupt or
Yeah,
corrupt?
depends who you ask. So, I think there will be a lot of criticism on Ukraine. Like, why are we helping a corrupt country? I think we need, especially as Americans, we need to be honest about what can we really expect from a country that's recovering from Soviet occupation. Um, I've made the observation in the argument before that um, communism can be so destructive to a country's society and economy that the effects can last longer than the radiation from than even like a nuclear strike. Um, it's an odd comparison, but if you figure like um, take a city like Nagasaki or Hiroshima and look at it nowadays, it's a bustling city and it's recovered uh, for the most part since a nuclear attack. But you can look at an Eastern European bloc, a former communist country, and you can still see the effects of communism in the architecture. You can see it in the human spirit even. And so I think people need to really uh, be realistic about what that kind of government, what kind of effect that has on the human spirit. But there's something different. It's in the air. It's hard to describe, but um, you can see it in just the soullessness of the Soviet architecture, just the complete drowning out of
The
individuality.
drabness.
Yeah, it looks like you feel like you're walking on a giant crime scene. Like when you walk across Soviet architecture, it looks like a crime scene to the spirit. That's how I feel when I'm around it. And so it's kind of like, well, what does the recovery arc look like from someone who's post-Soviet? And not only post-Soviet, but the Russians had a very, very intensive, corrosive investment scheme going on in Ukraine. They did not want to see Ukraine
And not only that, didn't like in
successful.
2013, Russia invaded like Crimea and all like
Yeah,
all the different parts of Ukraine they took away and stuff.
yeah. So Russians would often come into Ukraine and buy up really critical infrastructure like telecom and things like mineral rights to make sure that Ukraine could not export um, the resources it needs to be a successful democracy or successful republic. The Russians did a lot of work to make sure that Ukraine did not get on their feet. And when you talk to people, Ukrainians, about when the Soviet Union collapsed, you hear a lot of stories that aren't really in the books, aren't on the news, but even when they left, I've heard stories of Russians pouring the antifreeze of the tanks out into the crop fields, just to sabotage whatever they could when they left.
Yeah, I remember seeing that thing on some kind of news program a while ago where like some town in Crimea or some town of Ukraine where like it used to be like 95% Ukrainians, 5% Russians, now like 35% Russians. The Ukrainians like they're coming, taking our town over to a culture. You talk to Russia, like, oh no, we're not doing that. We're running from the war. We're in Russia, we'd be fighting the war right now. We're trying to come up and get away from the war, right?
Yeah,
So like so who's telling the truth, right?
yeah. In many ways, I don't want to call it a civil war, but you have a lot of people who, they have half their families in Russia, half their families in Ukraine.
Yeah, that program they definitely talk about how the either the current or the past Ukrainian prime minister, that's what he's called, like was actually like really pro-Russian, right? Like I think he did like
Yeah,
he set up for everything he did. A policy was like, okay, this is it. It's like it's advanced more the Russian cause than your own country's cause.
yeah, and that's part of. Well, Ukrainians know what it means to be a satellite of Russia, and the For me, a good indicator to reveal someone's understanding of the war is if they understand or if they even know about the agricultural
Because
Holocaust.
yeah, and but wasn't Ukraine like one they know is the breadbasket of the Soviet Union?
It was, and that's why they were such a prize of the Soviets. The Russians took Ukraine, and it was called the Holodomor. It was essentially a an engineered famine took place in Ukraine. Um, Long story short, when the Soviets came to power, they had this idea that uh, the scientific world was built around uh, Western science, not science, but Western science. So even things like agriculture, methods of agriculture, were capitalist interpretations of how to grow plants, not just how to grow plants, but capitalist versions of it. Because you had competing crops was something they disagreed with. There's a guy named Lashenko. I think it was Lukashenko or Lashenko. I think it was Lashenko. He was, I believe, the Minister of Agriculture in the Soviet Union, and he presented an idea to redo agricultural practices and the style of a communist ideal.
I know the story.
Yeah.
Actually, that scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson has a show
Okay.
about different scientists, and he had the program right on how like that guy ruined Soviet agriculture like for a
Yeah.
long time. He did like a whole series on that, like how that devastated
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. How this one guy,
Hmm.
like those other scientists that really were better, were growing stuff way better
Yep.
because this guy was like that with Stalin, everything was like destroyed.
Exactly. Exactly.
I remember that story.
Yeah, and I can't remember where he was from. I think he's actually from Ukraine. I'm probably all wrong. I should have this stuff better prepared. But wasn't ready to talk about Lukashenko. But um, but he did have a plan to spread the crops and provide them fertilizer and water evenly distributed as you would a communist society. And the whole idea was that all the plants will distribute their nutrients evenly, distribute the water evenly, and they'll cooperate. Be communist wheat, I guess. And of course, that failed. And like good Soviets, they hid that failure by prosecuting the farmers for failing and and also exporting the wheat to downplay the rumors that there was a famine. So whatever wheat they did manage to grow, they exported it to other European countries
Obviously, we have enough wheat. Why would we
obviously.
export it if we didn't have
Yeah.
enough wheat?
And it got so bad that if you hadn't starved to death, that meant you were hoarding food. You were a criminal.
And this was like the 50s,
No, this was in the 30s.
30s. Okay,
Yeah,
30s.
30s. Yeah, I was in the 30s. And so um, farmers who it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation where well, if you do manage to pull a yield on your crops, well, now you're a criminal, right? So um, it kind of goes back to um, what's in the beginning about giving your employees the authority and responsibility. You can't hold someone responsible for an outcome, but not give them the authority
Yeah.
to change it. And so this was the opposite, where they took full authority over everything and then held them responsible for the outcome. And so a lot of these farmers ended up, in camps up in Siberia. And now when they say, oh, well, this part of Russia or this part of Ukraine has Russian ethnicity, it's because those people were sent to camps back in the 30s and implanted there by the Soviets.
Yeah, and the sad thing is like the Russian people, they're great people. They've just been burned like quote unquote like horrible government, right? Since the
Yeah,
days of Peter the Great, all these different things they had to go
right.
through, right?
Yeah.
And like they have all the resources. I mean, it should be one of the leading countries in the world.
They have some great intellectuals, great intellectuals. They all leave, of course, um, but yeah, so there's a very dark history between Russia and Ukraine around agriculture. So the media totally missed the significance when Russia sends a ballistic missile into grain storage. You can report it as that, but it speaks very deeply to the Ukrainian psyche that Russia had always been sabotaging us through grain. Grain has been kind of a weapon that Russia has used against Ukraine, and then to hit a silo with a missile carries a huge amount of significance. It would be like Germany sending a VX gas missile to Israel.
Yeah,
There's a story behind
yeah.
that, or or
There was a thought process why they did that.
yeah,
It was calculated.
or making a train joke in a synagogue. You know,
Mhm.
there's a history behind why that is so bad, and so the media is very uh, very missing. They're missing the whole story behind this. So when Russia is attacking grain, there's a deep um, sadistic message to that.
So when the war in Ukraine first started, NATO, US still sending Ukraine all this money, right? Billions of dollars. Who knows how much money?
Right.
At first, like the American public, oh yes, send as much money as you want. But now it's like kind of changed. Like now it's more like, why are you spending some money to Ukraine? We
Yeah.
need money here, like of course, like the American public has the attention span of a goldfish, right? We go from
Right.
one thing to one thing within a matter of hours.
Right.
And the Ukraine war is hardly on the news anymore. But why do you think they'll change the mindset for the American public?
I think it's been reported incorrectly, and I wonder how much of that is purposeful. Because, for example, like if I wanted to give you, uh, or put it this way, if I sold you, not sold you, but I gifted you a truck of mine, and that truck was worth $40,000. I gave you, $40,000 in aid, and I can write that off my taxes, right? It's a tax write off, hopefully. Um, but I didn't give you $40,000. I give you something worth $40,000, or maybe right now it's only worth 2,000 because it's been through the ringer and I'm about to get rid of it. But because I bought it for $50,000 back in the day, I give you $50,000 worth of aid.
Well, not to mention, it's probably at the end of life cycle, will probably be done for in 6 months.
Right. Yeah. So when Ukraine gets like F-16s that are on their last few hours of flight time before that whole frame has to get salvaged, did we give them um, millions of dollars in F-16s, or did we just take something that was meant for the dump
Yeah.
and give it to them
I
instead?
definitely think American public has been on the news. Like we're giving like brand new 2025 versions of
No,
everything, right?
we're giving them,
Like off the assembly line,
yeah,
right to them.
yeah. So like when we're giving them the old armored personnel carriers, the M113s, that's a Vietnam era APC,
Mhm.
Vietnam era. We have no we have no business storing that, because if we are ever in a war where we've run out of Bradleys and now we're using M113s, for one, war has changed to the point where Bradleys are having to be replaced, which they are. Um, and these M113s built in the 70s, what are we going to do with them? So that's just one example. But we have a lot of equipment that is just being rotated out that needs to be disposed of, trashed, and just thrown in the dump essentially. And so, why not give it to uh, Ukraine in that sense? On paper, it may be worth many millions of dollars or
Yeah.
billions of dollars, but the reality of it, it's we paid for that stuff back in the 80s.
Mhm.
The old Abrams tanks. We're in a situation now where we're wondering, on one hand, are tanks still relevant to the battlefield? And at the same time wondering, well, why are we giving them all our tanks? Well, maybe they're not useful anymore. And especially the ones we're giving them are from the Desert Storm era.
Mhm.
They don't have uh, the same armor as the ones we have.
Yeah.
So if we're in a war where we're running out of Abrams or running out of Bradleys, we're gonna have other problems.
Yeah.
Other problems.
Like
Sure.
number one, Ford Motor Company, GM, what are you doing, right? Make
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Make
Exactly.
more.
Yeah. So the hesitation, I think, the hesitation to help, I think, is definitely a consequence of the politics.
Mhm.
I think people are just very, very fed up with anything foreign in terms of conflict. Um, and
Plus, it's way over there, right?
they say it's way over there, but I
I
mean,
mean, me,
when
it's
when it's
not, but most Americans
when
think
they
it's way over
produce like
there.
40% of the world's wheat, it's not so much over there. We need titanium. Ukraine exports titanium. There's a lot of things that they produce. I think they're a great ally because culturally, they are a great balance to what NATO has become. It is very, very careful, very risk adverse. I actually I got pulled over in Iraq by military police reacting to um, enemy indirect fire. Right. So people don't know this, but the military is so careful of things where I think it was an LSA Anaconda in 2004. I think it was. but we were QRF and we were responding to a rocket attack. And we were responding to it as you would at speed, driving fast. And we got pulled over by military police. That's how careful we are. And whereas Ukraine is a country where, we're giving them a drone and they're duct taping a bomb to it. And we're telling them, like, that's a bad idea because whatever you hit, that's going to explode. You understand that, right? Like you can't. Coming from the NATO perspective, we were giving them these drones, thinking this is a terrible idea. You can't fly this over friendly soldiers. You can't fly this in your own country. What if you have a GPS error and
Yeah.
the drone flies away with a warhead that's going to detonate the moment it touches anything? Terrible idea. But they're of the kind of, they're still coming from the post-Soviet mindset where it's all we got. So we're going to send it. And we need, I think, in the NATO alliance and just the Western world, someone who can cut through the red tape and just get it done.
Yeah, like it's sometimes like of course NATO was started as this alliance, the Soviet Union. Now it's like, are they really a military alliance? Or are they more like this bureaucracy? Like you like it's
Yeah,
more of
and
a
that's
hindrance to freedom and stuff versus actually like
yeah,
something
so
you depend on.
exactly. So this kind of goes into drone warfare in a way where um, drones, okay, drones in the Ukrainian war machine filled a gap that was apparent in a gap of capability in their artillery. In the NATO military, especially the American military, I think drones don't need to fill that gap. American artillery is second to none. If we have to delete a grid square, we can do that. No problem. Problem though is our bureaucracy of getting fires assigned onto a target. And so the gap in capability is not so much firepower. The gap in capability is more about uh, the speed of what they call the kill chain, how fast you can turn detecting a target into assigning a weapon to the target and then that, in my mind, has always been our weakest point. We can blow anything up, but getting us to decide to do it has always been um, the, the limiting factor in our lethality.
I think also how much I can't think of what I'm looking for, but how much of oh yeah, I can't think of what how much of the blank does the American public have like do stuff like that, right?
Say again. Sorry.
How much does the American public actually want to accept that, right? Most of the American public ain't gonna accept
Oh,
that stuff like that.
except that our chain of command or our
That if we like destroy a grid square, most American people are like we can't do that. Like, even like we bomb something, they want us like kill the 10 enemies, but the
right,
three kids, not kill them. Like that
right,
precision, and we can do it, of course, but like
yeah, we can.
how reasonable is that?
Well, you're only good as your intel, right? We still have tons of collateral damage even with smart weapons. Sad to say. Um, but uh, but yeah, I think the drones and the Ukrainian military close that gap and artillery capability. In the American military, I see it as closing the gap in um, decision paralysis. When you can give E4s, E5s the authority to direct fires beyond a kilometer, you really speed up the war machine. And I really hope that the American military adapts their 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 structures to really unleash our biggest our best tool ever, which is the NCO core. The NCO core is really who needs to have these drones, not giving these drones again to brigade-sized elements who have been notoriously slow in making decisions anyway. I mean, that's why we have uh, fighters capable of Mach 2 taking 3 hours to doing anything.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a situation we have supersonic weapons being deployed at subsonic decision making speeds. So the drone may not be an F-16, it may not be a Spectre gunship, but it can be deployed very quickly. And I think that's the asymmetric capability of it, the value of it. At the same time, I wonder with a Chinese chain of command being so rigid and so centralized, I wonder, I don't know, but I have doubts that they would be able to exploit their their perceived dominance in drones, because even companies like DJI, well, their entire drone sector is a fabrication of you know, central decision making, right? So um, even things like drone swarms,
Mhm.
it's 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 impressive to a lot of people, but to me, I see it as more like lack of um, a lack of decision making at the individual level. When I see a swarm, I see a lot of people were involved to make this happen. A bunch of drones doing the exact same thing,
Mhm.
and I kind of I get doubts sometimes. I wonder if the Chinese military is able to basically say they don't have an NCO corps.
Yeah.
I don't see them um, enabling their lower ranking individuals to exploit the at least temporary technical advantage they have with drones. I have my doubts. I don't know what that will look like yet, though.
I remember the first time I was in Afghanistan, I was at Kandahar, right, at brigade headquarters, and we had some drones out, and like drones were seeing stuff, whatever.
Right.
And someone was like, "Well, we need to have eyes on, we need to have human eyes." And
Yeah.
and people were like, "Let's ask a discussion like an hour, like you want eyes on the drones right there, right? Are you kidding, right? Like,
Mhm.
so you have the drone photo, like drone stuff, seeing what's going on. So you want to send up to an amount of soldiers down to verify the drone saying, right? Like, what kind of sense does this make? And luckily, the people who like pro drone won out, right?
Yeah. Well, there's limitations to ISR. You know, that's kind of what everyone's doing right now. There's not a whole lot of kinetic capability being thrown around with drones nowadays, which is sad, in my opinion, because um, ISR is you're just bringing a camera to a gunfight.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it has to be kinetic, um, and part of that I think is culture.
Yeah.
Um, you have these,
And this is make clear, like this was just pure, like wasn't a war to like fight, is like pure intelligence or just for like observations and
right?
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and well, it makes sense in a way when you look at our limitations in Afghanistan. The what prevented, to say, what really dictated our tempo of battle, like how fast we can um, we can engage in combat and do a follow-on mission. The limiting factor in that has always been intelligence, figuring out where the enemy is. That's always been the limiting factor. And so a lot of our drone capability has been built around ISR because we're trying to figure out where are they, who are they, and nowadays, well, we know where they are. Let's see them from space. There's a million of them, right? You can miss one and hit the other. They're the entire objective is saturated with targets. So the problem no longer is just ISR. It's delivering kinetics. And I think though when you have the tech sector, which has been divorced from the defense sector for so long, you have a cultural split where a tech company may not want to really get deep into the kinetics. Maybe they don't have the right culture for it. I can't speak intelligently. I haven't been on those boards or anything like that, but it is a little frustrating because it seems like a lot of drone companies will still focus on ISR as almost like a safety net, because if they don't get a contract with DoD, the drone that's doing ISR can just become a drone for police or a drone for security. Um, but you have to you have to make that split and just say, all right, we're going to go for a kinetic uh, defense product. It's not going to be for cops. It's not going to be for um, you know mall police. It's not going to be for anything else. It's going to be for the infantry. It's going to be for the grenadiers. It's going to be made for Ranger Battalion, and that's who our customer is.
Any plans to go back to Ukraine anytime soon? Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I think it's time.
Okay. So you were the first time you made connections there to help you out going back the second time, and you're like a kind of a network or something like
Yeah, you
that.
just have a professional network. It's I don't want to say it's all who you know, but at this point, I think a lot of the talkers have left the chat. The people who are still engaged over there and making things happen are the real deal. So in the very beginning, you had a lot of war tourism going, and nowadays, I think people have realized that this is not a playground. This is a very serious issue.
Yeah. Can we talk about that yesterday? Like, when the war started, he
Yeah.
seemed like he had like all these people like out of the woodwork from U.S. other countries. We're gonna go to Ukraine and save the Ukrainians from Russia. And I
Yeah.
asked you yesterday, like how many other people are still there, or within 30 days, they're like, oh shit, this is a real war. Let me get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, so a lot of the GWAT guys who may have deployed to Afghanistan back in like, 2018 or so, 2019, unless they were with like established infantry units, there wasn't a whole lot going on. Maybe more like 2019, 2020. But um, the tempo of battle and the violence of action that you witness on like a Russian artillery strike, nothing compared to what you would experience getting, um, half-assed rockets lob at you from insurgents. They're just not comparable. And so yeah, I think you had some guys went over there because they knew that was true, and they felt like they had to prove themselves. So they
I think
wanted,
that's a big thing too. People want to prove themselves.
yeah, yeah. And the hard thing about artillery is much like an IED, where there's not much you can do about it, and you can be the best soldier on earth, and you could speak 3 languages and have 20 years of service, but if MLRS is coming down on you, it doesn't matter. Um, and so I think a lot of guys kind of felt like their knowledge and their skills um, didn't really have much ROI on the battlefield going up against artillery. So it's a huge equalizer in that regard. The
But I
guy,
think you're right. A lot of people like, I went to Afghanistan, but I didn't do nothing for a year. I just sat
yeah,
around.
and that was a
I
lot.
need to prove
Yeah,
myself.
mhm.
And that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of that going on. And I think
Was there any stats that show like, like I'll make this number up, 1,000 Americans went there, 55 got killed, 75 got wounded, or anything like that?
no stats.
Okay.
I think there are. I have no idea how many there are. Um, and I could probably find that out. I just prefer just never to ask.
Yeah, that's
I
probably
just
for the best.
Yeah, and you just have it's just better. They do have the Legion, the Foreign Legion,
Yeah, I
and
forgot about them.
yeah, and those guys are no joke.
Mm.
They are. Um, they're going to have some interesting books come out someday, I'm sure, because you can't even just go there without having a good story.
Mhm.
Just arriving on the border, just going from Seattle
Yeah.
to Kyiv, you're going to have a story. You're just going to have something's going to happen to you. We're talking about. But these guys, they're going to have some crazy stories. How I would love to hear a story from North Korean guys who have been shipped from North Korea.
Oh, and
You need to have
and
them.
the Russian military is pretty much shit talking them, talking about how horrible soldiers they are.
Yeah, or who knows? You need to have. I would love to see one of those guys on the podcast.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the story that some North Korean infantrymen would have growing up in North Korea and ending up fighting some Ukrainian special operations in Belgorod. The stories that these guys might have. I hope we have some good POWs and
Oh man, that'd be that man. The word amazing, probably not the right word to use, but it'd be amazing. Like somehow the North Koreans become prisoner of wars for Ukrainians, and we're like
oh
gets intel and stuff like that. Man, that'd be
yeah,
fucking.
if I captured one, I don't even know how aggressive I could be. I would just be more like, tell me, how the hell did you get here?
I'd be like,
Where?
"Do you need some food?
Yeah,
You look
what?
hungry. You look hungry.
What?
Here's some food."
Yeah, maybe. I don't even know how I would react. I would it would be like seeing I don't know, like seeing a triceratops walk down the street.
Yeah. Or
You
the
do exist.
propaganda they might look at you like they might look at you like you're Satan, you're the devil's incarnate, right? You're the enemy of all the
They can
North
think
Korean
that.
people.
They can think that. I mean, I've met people who thought that about me before, and it's kind of funny tying RoofTec in with like being a sniper and tying back in customer service. Sometimes I have situations where a customer for whatever reason is incredibly unhappy, and I think to myself going into it like, well, if I can get someone who has been on the receiving end of us invading them, trust me,
Yeah.
and talk to me, I can fix the situation.
There's a book for you. Sales lesson learned from being in Ukraine.
Yeah, yeah. So there's almost no relationship that's not savable.
Yeah. I
Um,
believe that.
but you have to put in the work for it. You really have to. And yeah, I guess that's an interesting way to segue them all together.
Yeah. It all comes together some kind of way.
Yeah.
Um, what's your point? What's your take on the state of warfare today and how you think warfare is going to change in the future?
Oh man, war is going to be changing for sure. I think warfare is that could be 3 more hours. Warfare is changing in the same ways that I think all tech is changing, that society is changing. When we look at, I think the top, I'm going to answer this in a very long way. When we look at the top 50, um, the largest 50 institutions, financially speaking, whether it be a nation or a company or any kind of entity, of the top 50 um, institutions on the planet, 40% of that, I believe, I think it's 40, maybe 44%, are actually companies, not nations. And so the superpowers or the powers going into the next century, it may not just only be nations, it may just be enterprises also. So we're seeing.
So didn't you tell me yesterday that Apple is like 2.5 times the GDP of
I
Russia?
think it's like one. You have to fact check me on this for sure, but I want to say Apple's revenue is 1.5 times the GDP
Okay.
of Russia. You should look that up. It could be wrong, but I would not be surprised. So people haven't really realized just the sheer mass of the American economy. But with that, um, we're seeing across the board in almost every sector. I think politically, through media, through finance, and also in warfare, we're seeing um, I don't want to say a collapse, but an uprooting of platform-centric models and equipment.
So Apple's GDP is 3.8 trillion, Russia's 2.2 trillion. So
Insane, absolutely insane. And that's a side topic. I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about space exploration is going to continue to be a government-backed endeavor because it's too risky. You need the banks and the purse of a nation to take on these kinds of risks. But Russia has a space program, and they're smaller than Apple, right? So it's crazy to think that. But anyway, where warfare is headed, I think we are going to see the continued erosion of platform-centric systems and command structures. We're going to see. Um, I think we're approaching a situation where tech is so capable, where the only way to hide from it is by having no tech at all. So it's kind of funny. We think like, okay, we're going to have robotic warfare in the near future. Human casualties will start to become less part of the battle. It's completely the opposite. You look in Ukraine, this is the most robotic war we've ever had, and we have close to between 600 and 700,000 casualties. That's counting wounded and killed on the Russian side. We don't know what the Ukraine side is. So it's the most robotic war yet, and it's yet also the most violent we've had since World War II in Europe. So I don't think higher tech means less casualties
yeah,
by any means.
a lot of people think that. Yeah.
And so I think when robots are very good at fighting other robots. Robots give off fingerprints of who they are from a very great distance. Things like when they're emitting their radio waves, you can detect that. I think we're going to head into a situation where um, anything electronic is going to be spotted and seen. If you can imagine, if you had instead of night vision or instead of thermal goggles seeing someone's body heat, instead of that, if you saw someone's EMF signature, anything turned on electronically, any EMF, you'd be able to see that as an overlay on your vision. It'd be very hard for a robot to hide that and be able to communicate. So I think we're heading into an era where machines will detect other machines quickly and destroy them quickly. And the only way you can survive on a battlefield with hyper intelligent machines is to go completely biological, completely analog. Because at the risk of sounding very cocky, um, I'm very confident that me with a rifle, the ghillie suit, with natural vegetation, and just my own brain. No map telling me where I'm at, no phone telling me where I'm at, no GPS, no radio. Just me understanding the mission, knowing the terrain because I've been there before. With a rifle, I could defeat pretty much anything. With enough patience and will to suffer, I could defeat it.
Patience being the key word, I think.
Patience, absolute patience, and fieldcraft. Fieldcraft is huge. Because if you, this would be a good debate between someone like me and someone who's very deep down into the world of machine vision. Um, a properly trained sniper is so good at camouflage that the only way you're going to spot them is if you have a dog or you step on them. And and I can't even go into detail about how we play tricks on the human eye, how we are invisible. I won't go into that, but um, I'm confident myself and many other snipers I know, we could be in one end of the field and you could put a Hubble telescope in the other. I do not care. We could take it without being seen.
Let me ask you this. So obviously if your target's like a human being, you know where to shoot at a human being, right?
Right.
But how do you know what point of the robot to shoot at to disable it?
Oh, well, they're mass produced, so we know the weak points.
Okay.
Like let's say a hypothetical situation would be like counter drone system would be like a high powered microwave. That's going to be a giant rectangular dish, right? Shooting out these high powered microwaves downing drones. That's going to be what, 10 feet tall, 4 feet wide. I could hit that from 2 kilometers with the right rifle. And how do you intercept a piece of copper coming through the sky? You can't jam copper, can't jam lead. So there's as much as we think we're going down this technological revolution, um, you know, fieldcraft, old school fieldcraft, biomass, um, like old school Vietnam era camouflage is going to become even more apparent, especially if we're going to be fighting in the Southeast Pacific or Southeast Asia. Fieldcraft, camouflage with natural vegetation is going to be huge.
So you're pretty well versed in like different political hotspots, potential war zones, right? What's a potential war zone that people don't know about, right? 'Cause like South China's not really in the news anymore. Like what's pot you think like okay, it's on the news, but like people, yeah, nothing's gonna happen there. But it could potentially be
It
the
kind of goes into
choke
almost
point.
conspiracy theories in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Like, I think the important thing to do is shut off the news in terms of and rhetoric and look at capabilities. And actually, Putin said something like this, I think in the early 2000s, where the lesson that Putin took from Stalin's mistake with Hitler was that Stalin was listening to Hitler's words and not looking at his capabilities. And Putin, in a way, said, "I will no longer um, listen to someone's words. I will interpret their capability as intent. If you're able to do something, it's because you want to."
Okay.
And so, um, and that's why I think when he saw that NATO could not do NATO things, he was like, "All right,
Here's my
I
opportunity.
got your intent. You are not what
You're like combat ineffective right now.
exactly." And so,
And
um,
US, you too preoccupied with all the other stuff you got going on.
yeah, we're too divided to really be a force as we can see now. Um, so capability equals intent. That's a huge thing. So I'm looking at more like who is capable of what and why. Um, if you look at things like the foreign exchange reserves that Russia built up 2 years prior to invading Ukraine, you look at things like that. Like what are the things that a nation would do intelligently to reinforce themselves to get ready for sanctions? So you want to look at like foreign exchange reserves. You want to look at hoarding things like food and oil. And then as the time approaches for invasion, then you look at the logistics of troops and where they're going, what are they bringing with them. That
How
kind of
many years
stuff.
in advance do you think they were planning this?
Forever,
Forever. Okay.
forever, always.
Like a long term
We always
plan.
we always knew it was going to happen,
Okay.
and I think that's why. Um, I think Ukrainians always knew it. Um, uh, Depending on how you look at it, this is almost the fourth time Russia has invaded Ukraine in
Yeah.
less than 150 years.
Mhm.
So this is like we're all surprised by this, but in retrospect, it's right on schedule.
Do you think the Ukrainian people elected a quote unquote comedian kind of emboldened them even further? Like, man,
Oh
Ukraine,
yeah, absolutely.
they had this comedian. They're fucking yeah,
Yeah,
this easy
yeah,
peasy now.
yeah. I've heard reports that Putin made a comment that the West's hero was Greta Thunberg,
Yeah.
um, and he looked at who we regard as heroes and leaders in our particular society and saw those as all signs of weakness. Um, so yeah, I don't think he attacked because he was afraid.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I think he saw weakness and pounced on it. He just didn't know how weak he was also, apparently. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. It's kind of hard to be a bully when you can't fight yourself, right?
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I think he was enticed. He saw an opportunity. It was Ukraine was a target of opportunity, not a threat.
Yeah.
Not a threat at all.
Like we said earlier, like what was this yes man feeding information? Kind of what they tell him. Like probably
Right.
I remember hearing one news part hey that he was told all the Ukrainian people they're gonna like as soon as the Russian shows across the board, they're gonna raise up the Russian flag, all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, supposedly.
There's some real romantic views of people wanting the old order back, I guess. And
The
it's
good old days when my grandfather was a part of the Soviet Union, that kind of stuff.
yeah, it's interesting to hear their stories, Ukrainian stories about all this, because even in my own ignorance, back in the day, Ukrainian sounded a lot like Russian, and like 4 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, no, 4 years ago, I didn't even know that Ukraine and Russia was a different language. I had no
Yeah.
idea. Now I can hear it and I can know the
Mhm.
difference. Ukrainian is more like a sung language. It sounds eloquent. Russia is a lot more harsh.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that goes back to why some people may not really see the need to back Ukraine because they themselves are not really brought up to speed
Yeah.
on the history of it, and that this is not just a one-time thing. If if all of Ukraine fell to Russia, like we thought it would have the first few days, if all of Ukraine right now was Russian occupied, that's not the end of it.
Yeah.
There's a very, very good chance that we would end up having to be fighting.
I'm a firm believer. Hope I'm wrong. First of all, hope Ukraine doesn't fall. But Ukraine fall. I know that we probably had like 2 or 3 divisions in Poland within as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, and the cost of that. So I don't know. I think it's a lot cheaper to give them all of our old stuff
Yeah.
that we're about to throw in the trash anyway than deploy a few divisions.
There will definitely be a lot of army shit, U.S. military shit in Poland, even
Yeah,
more than it is now.
yeah, and it's frustrating because this war right now looks like World War One. It could very easily look like Desert Storm 2.0.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of choice. And that's not to take away from the Ukrainian military.
Mhm.
They're doing a phenomenal job with what they got. But if a real superpower was involved in this, it would be over
Yeah.
very, very quickly.
And odds not taking Russia's side, but if you're Russia, you're thinking, okay, I'm battling Ukraine now, but I could potentially be fighting the U.S., Sweden, Finland, all in NATO. And maybe in Putin's mind, he's like, okay, it's me against the world, right?
Yeah.
We're the right. We're the greatest country ever. The whole Western civilization against me, right? I have to stand my ground in Ukraine and push further.
Mhm. You think that's what his
But I
thought
think it,
process?
think it might be.
It could be. I mean, he's got an endless amount. He hasn't really touched. He hasn't really touched his. I guess what they. This is matter for debate. People refer to as their ethnic Russians.
Mhm.
What that is, I guess I'll let them define that, right? But they're pulling a lot of people from like Siberia, Eastern Russia, which are Russian, obviously, but we're talking like St. Petersburg, Moscow. They're not pulling from those regions for a very good reason.
Yeah.
They want to use everyone else first.
Yeah.
Their own prison populations pull from North Korea and leave the young men who will probably marry and have you know whatever few kids they will have repopulate. Um, so I don't they don't they don't react to casualties the way that
No, it's
they,
just
they,
yeah.
they don't. And I think it's a fool decision to expect them to finally capitulate.
No,
Um,
and they never have right. Napoleon War is a meat grinder. Hitler is meat
yeah,
grinder.
yeah,
It's their expendable people, so to speak.
yeah, it's awful.
With us, one
The-
is one too many. With them, it's like it's only 100,000.
yeah, yeah, and it's
We can reproduce.
yeah, and eventually there will be a day when it's too much. But I don't think it's wise to try to imagine what that number is.
Yeah,
Um, this is a way this is a war you can you can shoot your way out of this war you can, but don't expect it to be a low number like 700,000. It could be.
yeah. But I definitely expect them up. Or I think it's a different mindset, right? With us in America, we think, okay, we're only fighting the Russians, right? But I think the Russians, they don't think they're fighting America. I think the Russians think we're fighting America, England, France,
Well,
Finland,
yeah.
NATO.
So there is people need to understand where they're coming from. And I saw this actually when I was in Belize. When I was in Belize, I was trying to open up a bank account. And opening a bank account, I had, a lot of people to fill out, not from Belize, but from America. So like know your customer forms, that kind of stuff. Whatever information Belize wanted from me, a lot of that was coming from the US wanting to know what I was doing in Belize. And wherever you go in the world, you feel America's influence. Like I went to while I was working in Afghanistan, and I would take regular vacations. The beautiful part about working in the private military sector is you get leave like every 2 months or every 3 months. You can go anywhere in the world you want. So I would be in Afghanistan for like 8 weeks, 9 weeks, and then I could go to Italy for 3 weeks, go back to Afghanistan, then go to Greece. I went to China twice, primarily because I was trying to find one spot on the planet where I would not run into American culture, and I failed every time. And so I picked a spot as like the middle of China, no electricity. I picked the name of the town. They probably don't even know what it's called, if it even has a name. Deep in these rice terraces. I think it's a place just outside Yangshan, if I'm saying it right. Yangshu, not sure. But it's a rice village, no electricity, had one generator. And the houses were put together with just pegs, no nails. So incredibly rural China. First white guy they've ever seen, ever.
Mhm.
I'm like, finally, this is the spot where I want to know, what is the world like when America's not around? What do things, what is the food like? There's not just KFC everywhere. And I'm going around this little village, and I hear generator. I go into this room, and it's like 5 kids watching NBA, and they're watching American basketball. Wow, there's nowhere on this planet you can go without feeling the cultural might
It
of
is kind of
America.
funny, like there's countries out there, people that are like, I hate America, America
Yeah,
sucks. And then they're saying I hate America with a fucking Coca-Cola shirt
yeah.
on or
There's a
Budweiser
lot
shirt
of
on,
that, and it's over the
We
top.
hate you, but we would love your culture.
Yeah, well, even in China, Snoopy is huge. And what's funny, I'm from Minneapolis, and the creator of Snoopy is from St. Paul. So you go to St. Paul, there's Snoopy stuff everywhere. So I'm trying to like get away from, not get away from America. I just want to know what is the world like when America's not in your face all the time. Um, and so I go to China, and now I have my hometown mascot. Like it's even worse. And so I think what happens is when you have countries like this who are trying to find their way and their rank in the world. If you're Central Africa, the U.S. will use your access to capital as a way to kind of steer you into policies.
Mhm.
Like I remember in Belize, Belize is actually a very religious country, um, and I was surprised to find out Rastafarians are actually very.
And I believe that they're like the very top of South America, right?
No, there's well, you have Mexico,
Mhm.
and just below the Yucatan Peninsula, you have Belize. So
Okay.
it's east of Guatemala.
Okay.
So it's an interesting country where the first language is English, um, and they're a British colony, and so British law is
Did
kind
not
of,
know that. I
yeah,
thought they were a Spanish colony.
yeah. So they're you can get around in English just fine. Their laws are, they're not a English colony, but they were at one point. But their law is basically cut and paste British law. So whatever you can do in England, forming a company, owning land, that kind of stuff, it'll work in Belize. So I think they were just too chill to have their own law system. They just became independent. Like, yeah, let's just go back to the beach and just let's just use British
It's,
stuff.
I smoked the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So living there, I still felt the force of America's financial weight. It's almost like when you're outside New York City, you can still feel New York. Like
Yeah.
you can go all the way to Boston, you still feel like New York is like,
Yeah.
you can tell it's that way. Wherever you go in the world and you're trying to do business, you feel America's grip on capital. You feel it
Yeah.
trying to navigate the world.
I mean, the dollar is the world's economy, right?
It is. And 98% of the world's trade is carried by the seas, and we police the seas.
Yeah.
So you're going to feel our presence
You ever
everywhere.
read this book called Alfred Mayne's The Power of the Sea? I think it's what it's called.
Mm-mm.
Book by Alfred Mayne.
No.
It's a book that Theodore Roosevelt used to expand the Navy.
Yeah.
The guy named Alfred Mayne, I seen the link. It basically is like, maybe it's the night. Basically, it's like how whatever country controls the seas controls the water
Yeah.
economy.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes total sense. And I think that's what we have. That's what we have to lose. And that's what they have to gain over a Pacific War. Different topic though. But I think what Putin's trying to tap into is um, a lot of nations who feel like they want access to capital for development without giving up their particular value system that
Yeah.
is not in line with the Western liberal ideals.
Yeah.
So we kind of have like this as a superpower. We kind of have a cancel culture about us, where if you are not towing the line to our ideals of human rights and whatnot, you don't get access to capital, and you're not going to get that inter-American development loan. You're not going to get that the IMF loan unless you push these policies. And in our minds, they may be, the right thing to do to allow uh, certain freedoms in that country to be standard. But that country may have a history between two or three different demographics
Yeah.
where they don't want that particular demographic to come to power. If they adopt this law, they may end up in a civil war of some type. So they want to have development, but they don't want to um, toe the line with our particular value system. And so now you have situations where autocracies, you know, have a few dollars to the name now, and they can fund these development projects without them having to give up their particular value sets. So I think Putin's really capitalizing on that, and that's a real danger. It's a real danger because we may look at these countries as being a fragment of the or of the world's share of GDP, but when you take the populations of BRICS and you put them all together, that's probably more than half the world's population. It's significant.
Too, it'll seem like I think when Americans go to different countries to travel, I think most Americans have the tendency, okay, I'm gonna go to Malaysia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn Malaysia, right?
Right.
They get there, everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
So like they quickly, okay,
Yeah.
why am I wasting my time learning
Yeah.
Malaysian for, right?
Yeah.
Everyone speaks English.
Yeah. It's hard because their English is good enough to just
Good
be
enough,
like,
yeah.
even if you were,
You can order a meal, you can get a
yeah,
drink,
yeah,
ask for directions somewhere.
yeah, like you could go to Sweden and you could be halfway fluent in Swedish, but they are so good at English
Yeah.
that it's just going to be easier just to
And
jump on.
and it's like, why make the effort? I know that's the bad thing to say. Well, why make the effort? But man,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
why waste hours and hours of learning this
Well,
language?
yeah, tech will solve that problem. I mean, nowadays they have
The Google Translate and stuff like
well,
that.
even better than that. I think one's called like Babelfish.
Yeah, I'll cover to that one.
But it's basically a real-time earpiece that just translates. I had one actually for a roofing crew back in the day, but for Spanish they only had a female voice,
Mhm.
so everything I said came out as a female voice, and so it became kind of an ongoing joke that whatever I said in Spanish through this translator was like a very high. It was a very feminine voice too, like a very high pitched one too.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, maybe next year they'll have an update where I can have like a more matching voice on this one.
So moving on, we're gonna talk about drone tech in a minute.
Yeah.
But besides drone tech, what kind of tech out there really excites you?
Um, IoT people, it was kind of the thing for a while, but I think IoT is going to actualize pretty soon. I hope it does. That kind of ties into drones. Um, let's see what other techs. Well, crypto's kind of come and gone. That never really promised to deliver the things we thought it would. Come the exact opposite, actually. We thought it'd be a decentralized way of banking, and now it's actually um, central bank issued digital currencies. It's the complete opposite of that. I have yet to come to a conclusion of what I think about AI. One day I'm hugely impressed by it, and the other day I'm just like, there's no way do what I could do. There's no way. And then 5 minutes after, I see a new thing on LinkedIn. I'm just like, shit, never mind. I was totally wrong on that. I just go back and forth. Um, I results aren't in yet on AI because I have the analogy that I use is okay when mankind made the first steam engine, steam powered train. That was like the first time we went faster than a horse, right? For all we knew, fastest any person could travel up to that point was on a horse's back. Making a steam powered train, we could go 40, 50 miles an hour. And we thought, well, maybe it's only a matter of pressure till we get to 60, right? With more pressure, we can get to 80. But you become aware of things that actually are preventing you from going faster. It's not a matter of pressure anymore. You have at that high RPM in your train, in your yoke mechanism, you have vibration. That vibration will literally throw you off the rails. So you come across, as you go faster, you come across new limitations, and you find out, okay, well, we can't reach newer speeds through steam engines, but we can reach faster speeds through rubber tires and combustion engines. Like, okay, well, we can only go so fast. Tires, we have to fly for the rest. And then you go down this rabbit hole of, okay, now you need different wings. You need swept back wings to break the sound barrier, different types of jets, blah, blah, blah. You need to invent whole new methods of going faster. And I wonder if the same is true with AI, where we may get very, very, very close, but to actually do proper general artificial intelligence to actually achieve that, I wonder if the only way to do that is through biology. If there's just some things that only biology can do. I wonder about that. I wonder if it'll get really close and then just realize, but as close as we can get without doing it the old way. So I always thought it'd be kind of funny, like you could go onto like the next AI what do they call it, presentation of the latest AI developments, and brag that you've built something that equals human intelligence, and just hold up a baby, you know. And there may be the only way we can do this is by our own children, and it saddens me because I wonder. It's just sad that we put so much money into developing AI, and at the same time we have kids around us that are capable of so much, and they're just cutting schools. I think that really bothers me. Teachers are paid so poorly, and we have all these AI machines running around being discarded and forgotten about. I would love to see kids being put back, or their education at least being put on a high priority list, at least equal to AI, at least.
Nice. Yeah, AI, like who knows what it'll go to? Like, I know a lot of people are scared of AI singularity, with robots that think for themselves and take over civilizations,
Yeah.
But who knows, what's going to happen in the future,
Just have
or not
kids.
happen.
Just have kids. It's easier. I think it's easier.
Yeah.
Well, and to think of like this, if the prospect of having children is scary or is too much responsibility, then you have no business pursuing AI.
Yeah. So do you see the latest thing Elon Musk is doing?
Which one?
So this one,
Well, I saw the robots at the robot fair.
the one, like the one that have
yeah.
like like a keep your baby for you, and like, yeah. So
He might need that with
yeah,
his however many kids he has,
yeah,
But yeah, I saw that, and I guess there were rumors that there were actually the robots were not entirely as autonomous as we thought they were. They were actually being controlled through haptic senses,
yeah,
haptic sensors with someone in the back.
yeah.
Just like Amazon had that shopping experience. Come to find out that
That was the craziest shit ever.
yeah,
It's like, man, like that's insane. All this, like, I mean, I've been to Amazon Go store a few times, right? You could go in,
yeah.
and it's like all manual.
Yeah.
Like,
It was just someone else in other part of the planet.
and I had to think, man, how did they let they get out too, right? You would think they would keep that as top secret as they could, right? Like, but they leaked
Yeah,
out.
just don't launch it. Just I mean, if they say they're not ready, I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
I can understand.
it's some
Maybe
random
just
people.
me just being in tech, I can imagine that the last 5% is actually as hard, if not harder, than the previous 95%.
That was just
So
crazy. When that came out, like, what the fuck?
yeah, so I
Like,
think
what can we believe now?
I think so exactly. I think the same thing
First, Santa
happened.
Claus is not real. No, this ain't real.
Yeah,
Everything's a fake.
yeah. The same thing happened with Tesla's bots, and maybe they're not around the corner, or maybe they are around the corner with that capability. I don't know. And that's kind of why it goes back to the battlefield. Everyone is anticipating robots being AI driven killing machines.
Yeah, the Transformers fighting our battles for us.
Well, okay, here's a problem. It's like, okay, if it's a visual detection of a human to determine if they're a threat or not, that's actually quite hard because I'm not going to be walking around with my rifle
Hmm.
fully visible. I'm going to be looking like a bush,
Hmm.
right? And the level of confidence that that model will need to have that that bush is a threat. How many other things look like that, right? They have to have next to zero confidence with my particular shape and image being a sniper, that they're going to see snipers everywhere. So, I would love to have that conversation with someone who's actually, down that rabbit hole, but I'm a little bit skeptical that a robot would be able to find me. Finding other robots, yeah, I think that's very possible. They give off emissions and RF signatures and whatever else. I don't do that. At least not easily detectable.
So is drone tech actually a thing? Drone tech,
You know,
like
like
that, like fintech, insurance tech.
oh,
Is drone tech is it actually a category tech?
I don't think so. You definitely have people who are really in love with the idea of drones and defense. That see drones as replacing everything. Everything's going to be a drone now. That's certainly not the case. It's a way to bridge some capabilities together, I think. But counter drone systems are coming online pretty quick. They're pretty good. And so, um, like right now, I think drones as we know it right now are going to be on their way out in the near future. Near future, maybe a couple of years or less, where you have a kamikaze drone strapped with the RPG, the det fuse going into a target. As counter drone systems come online, things moving that slow, moving that close to a target, probably going to get whacked by a counter drone system. Problem though is counter drone systems operate either through like kinetic, so it'd be like a machine gun. 7.62 isn't really effective past 800 meters. If you had an AI detecting a drone, for example, and calculating its trajectory, its flight path, you have to lead that target. And at a kilometer, your flight time on that bullet is going to be, approaching, I want to say 1.6 seconds. And that drone is not going to be following that same predictable flight path. So interdicting a drone at distance with machine gun fire is going to be pretty difficult, even if you have a very good uh, predictive model. Same with like high powered microwaves. Things like the inverse square law basically prevent you from being as powerful as you need to be beyond a certain distance. So drones that can attack targets beyond a kilometer, beyond 2 kilometers, that's the next phase of it for sure. Because counter drone countermeasures are going to have a hard time defeating a target at distance. At least a system that's man packable, or you can put on an APC.
How much skill, how much knowledge does someone have to have that could build their own drone from scratch, so to speak?
Oh well, nowadays, I mean, you need a license, of course, to fly it for commercial purposes. But a DJI is very forgiving. There's so many safety features built in these things. You could know next to nothing. If you play a few video games, you can fly one. DJI. The ones that I build, not the case. It's more like handing someone a crotch rocket, right? So you need to know what you're doing. You need to be cognizant of all things quadcopter to really make use of it. Well, not to make use of it, but to use it to its full potential. Um, Motorcycles are less forgiving than four-wheelers, for example.
And all drones, except the very small ones, are controlled or regulated by the FAA.
Yeah, I want to say it's 250 grams or heavier
Okay.
is regulated by the FAA. So that's kind of like what happened was in order for the FAA to regulate these small UASs or these drones, they had to bring them their their scope of authority, I guess you could say, and they do that by um, registering each drone with the FAA. So if you're like a homeowner and you had a drone flying above your house, shot it down, then that's the same as shooting at an FAA licensed aircraft.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't do
And
that.
you have to get a drone pilot license. You have
Right.
to get like an airplane license, right?
Yeah, and it's it's almost overkill for like for what a lot of us do. Um like flying in Washington, highest we've ever had a drone fly for work. It's like 50 feet. So maybe even 40 feet. So if a plane hit us, it was already crashing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, but some guys will be pushing it, beyond 400 feet for photography. We don't do photography,
Mm.
but yeah, you do need a license, and it's pretty easy. It's basically looking at just aviation charts and just knowing the obvious do's and don'ts of flying a drone.
So talk about the concept of usable airspace, how that affects drones and stuff like that, and privacy and all that kind of stuff.
I don't think we've had enough case law to really know what that means yet, and I haven't kept up on that. But usable, the FAA basically says that you don't have, well, a drone cannot use your usable airspace. And what is your usable airspace as someone with an apartment? Do you use your airspace often? Probably never. I'd probably open for interpretation. If you owned a business that tests kites, maybe that's something you could, fight in court. But I think we've also moved past the initial shock of the technology as a society, where when drones first came out, everyone was on edge about um, people taking pictures of their houses and whatever else. Drones have had enough time now in society to know if they're going to be a persistent menace or not. Um, so I haven't heard of that being an issue. Even the other pilots I know, um, I don't know anyone who's had an issue with homeowners or anything like that.
Yeah, I know. Like me personally, like you always hear all the time. You hear like Amazon or
Yeah,
whoever's gonna start
yeah.
Amazon drone delivery, right? It's a good thing, but do we really want like hundreds of drones flying through the sky delivering
I don't
packages,
know how they're going to do that.
delivering packages to the wrong address, and like all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do that.
I don't know if I want like
Yeah,
all over the
they
place.
can be a little bit loud. I yeah, I really wonder about that because it's one of those things where it seems like a great idea, a really great idea until you get into the workings of it with payload. Um, well, Amazon does the unthinkable all the time, in my opinion, delivering, that thing I need at 7 in the morning.
Yeah, that came from 3 days away.
That's $5, and they got here somehow for
Yeah,
free. I don't know how that works, but I'm sure they can figure it out. But it's probably going to be a very limited use case.
yeah.
It's probably going to be very specific routes, um, uh, and it would need to be a purpose-built platform, aerial platform, because fixed wing can go far. Fixed wing drone could go far, just propeller with wings, but they lack payload capacity. Quadcopters have very good payload capacity, but they lack range. So probably a mix of those two, I'm sure they'd have to go with, and they might even need like a different airframe for a particular route. So one route you might need one hybrid of an airframe,
Mm.
another route might be a quad, whatever else. So yeah, it's one of those things we thought was going to happen any day now. Um, and I don't know if FAA is preventing that from becoming a real thing. I don't know,
That's a good point.
but I had doing roofing. I have everyone here as a customer. I worked for a guy who's an attorney involved in this, trying to talk to just Washington L&I, just being like, how are we going to classify the drone pilot? Because like there is no L&I delegation for a drone pilot, at least not last time I checked. Um, so like right now they're like, oh, well, they're doing roof work. They're a roofer. No, they're not. They're sitting in a truck. They're not on a roof. It's a different risk class. So government still has to catch up on this. At least Washington has to catch up on it.
Yeah, I definitely believe the government is always like way far behind of the tech.
Yeah, and
They have a hard time catching up.
and they're saying, oh, we need more time to determine what the risk is of a drone pilot and blah. And they can't just be like, all right, well, they drive a truck, so let's just have it be a truck driver's risk
Yeah, like
category
how do you tell what to pay?
just to start.
How,
Because otherwise,
yeah, how do you tell what to pay the drone pilot too?
yeah, well, yeah, because the I think the L&I rate for like a roofer is like, depending on several factors,
Mm.
it could be like $7 or $8 an hour, and that would disrupt a lot of economics for drones, even if that drone's being piloted by a person. It could be beyond visual line of sight ordeal where they're being powered by visual guidance
And
or
what happens
whatever
like the
else.
drone pilot's former union and they say we should be paid as much as an airline pilot?
Yeah, I hope that wouldn't happen. It does suck when drone pilots call themselves pilots.
Yeah,
It's not. I have a lot of respect for what pilots do. Ton of respect.
yeah.
I've had
I mean, you're a drone pilot. You're probably not putting like hundreds of people at risk at a time.
no, no, and it's so forgiving. I mean, yeah, you crash, you break a window, or you run into a car. It's not going to be in the news. You know? And there's a lot of software backing you up in that. But It's 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 not on the same planet of being
No.
a pilot. Not even close. Not even close.
So, Drew, you talked some about your company, RoofTec.
Yeah,
Can you go into more details, like why you started the company, what you focus on now, what your vision is for the company?
that's sad actually. I started RoofTec because I couldn't find a job. Couldn't find a job. Moved back to the U.S. after Belize, and I worked for that one roofing company in Minneapolis. But I actually bought my property out in Seattle many years before that when I was rich. And so I was like, all right, I'm I'm the first rich person in my family, might be the last. I'm not even sure how long I'll be rich for. So I'll just buy this house now while I can. And so it was a good move. But when I came back to the States, after Belize, that Belize endeavor, I was just Craigslisting it looking for work. And so um, I think a great thing to do as an entrepreneur is know how to lose everything and rebuild your empire because you're going to be less afraid to take that risk. Like I know for a fact I could lose everything today and I'll eat tomorrow. No problem. No problem. So, and that's of course with some advantages that I have, like a working body. My hands work. I have two arms and two legs. I can go clean gutters. I can charge $200 a pop. I can do 3 a day. You know? So with a ladder that costs $100, a $10 bucket, $20 hose, and my hands, I can go make $600 a day, easy. And I like to think anyone with two arms and two legs that can stand on a ladder comfortably can do that. So roof tech was just more of a way to just basically make sure that I can eat and and take care of my family. And it was never meant to be a full-time gig. It was just a placeholder. It was just a way to get to the next thing. But it got a little traction. And it's funny that the company you wanted to work out and do well got zero traction, and the joke that you had on the side is the home run. So you know, who knows where your success is going to come from. But Roof Tech was just it was a weekend thing to make sure I could just pay for a phone, pay for a
And
car.
now it's paying for everything, so to speak.
Yeah, it's paying for a lot of stuff. Paying for a lot of stuff. So and now I have a really good network of people. Um, a very very strong professional network, and I think being in the roofing sector has been really good because you learn to talk to your customers for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and as as digital media and marketing takes over, you really see that the ability to walk into someone's house and actually, write a contract over coffee over a 2 hour period. I don't know how anyone's going to be able to replace that. I don't see it.
In the future, vision like be the number one roof company in Seattle, number one roof company in the state of Washington. What's your goal with that?
So again,
Yeah, so what's your goal for the company? Like be the number one company in Seattle,
I
states?
like to go fully into robotics. I think I have a really good team. Um, I think everyone that works for me is phenomenal. I don't have there's not one person in my organization that needs to work on something. Well, they need to work on something, but I'm happy with everyone that I got. So whatever I do, I want to take them with me. That's my team.
Mhm.
So whether we're doing roofing or we're doing robotics, they're coming with me 100%. Um, and so I think roof tech is good because it helps pay for my experiments. I can try out a sensor, or I can try out a motor, or try out a propeller, and if it costs $500, I don't have to worry about that. Whereas if I was a startup with a runway, I really needed to watch my experimentation. So I think it's good to keep it, I think, and let it turn into a more of a tech company. And really, my biggest problem, I'm sitting on too many golden eggs, and I need to just hatch them. Um, the sensors, I have not flexed. RoofTech has not flexed its muscle by any means. I've been too distracted with um, defense stuff, Ukraine stuff, to really deploy that strength. I think we're kind of a sleeper company. Like we have an awesome team, some awesome tech, and I just need a week or two, to just say, all right, now we're launching the stuff that works.
So speaking like launching your stuff, so RoofTec is like we'll say more like a traditional company.
It is, yeah.
So there's a Black Tusk Technology more like your startup.
Yeah, it's a startup. Between me and one other guy, he's ex special forces, um, and he's the opposite of me. We talked about that. He's the regulatory guy. He's the guy that makes sure that we're staying within the regs of what
Cross the
we're doing.
T's, dotted I's.
Yeah, I need that. I need that 100%. And I'm the one who's you know getting distracted with new ideas, new capabilities, and he's more like, nope, we need to focus on this particular capability, this mission set. That's what we're doing. So so we have conflict in personnel, but we have zero conflict. Um, and a great guy. It was funny. We actually founded the company together without even meeting through our network of just people that we know. So we exchanged uh, finances, and traded money, and formed the entire company with never meeting.
Where does he live at?
I can't say,
Okay.
but he's on the East Coast
Okay.
area, so he's a different time zone. But it's good we're in a different time zone also
And
because
this is the company you're taking to Fort Benning pretty soon to do some kind of like
yeah, I think we're going to be working with DoD on some stuff because like I said, we're in the drone sector, and we're building not what's hot right now, but where we think drone technology is headed.
mhm.
Um, and that works out because we can't move as fast as companies that are well capitalized and have a um, ton of employees. We have to kind of anticipate where the market will be when we're ready for it. So that time is quickly approaching.
So the Department of Defense, I know for like moving slower than slow bureaucracy. How are you going to convince them like to do business with a startup?
That's hard. It's very hard. And that's where a lot of companies fail in the defense sector. I think they call it like the valley of death. And a lot of that comes from when companies will uh, they'll quit their day job and like, all right, we're all going to go do this defense tech thing, and we're going to raise $10 million on whatever. That money goes away very fast, and DoD moves very slow. So you need a way to capitalize yourself and keep your blood pressure up to sustain prolonged drought. And that drought could be years. It could be 3 or 4 years. So the DoD is trying to introduce new methods, and they have so many methods of purchasing equipment and testing things that I can't keep track of. I hear new entities, new programs, new things, probably on a maybe 3 or 4 times a week. I find some kind of new entity. That's my co-founder's wheelhouse. That alone, just finding the different financial mechanisms, instruments the government has to purchase things, that is a full-time job. That could be just a whole team easily. So that's essentially his work. But the government understands that they need to move faster. They definitely understand that. And I'm hoping that we have the right people in the right places to make that happen. I think we do. I hope we do.
So you're the CEO of this other company too?
Call me the CTO.
CTO, okay.
Yeah, CTO. And yeah, I think CTO is the best.
So how do you plan like you obviously figure this out, right? So you have two companies. Most people can't, handle like a regular 9 to 5 job, right?
Right.
And you already said your RoofTech is kind of like you kind of like kind of hands off, so to speak.
Right.
But still, you have two companies. Like, how do you like manage like the responsibilities, all that kind of stuff with two jobs, competing responsibilities, and then you still have I'm assuming you have family responsibilities, kids, social life. How do you like do all that stuff, so to speak, without going insane?
With RoofTech, I get space to operate both companies by trusting the people that work for me. I trust their judgment. I trust them to do the right thing. And I've already forgiven them when it didn't work out. Like, um, after today, turn my phone back on, and if something happened, um, I have full faith in my team that they made the best decision with the information they had. Um, and I'll know when it deviates. I know the trade well enough to know when somebody made an actual bad call.
I'm guessing anything less than someone fall off the roof and breaking a leg and really hurt.
Yeah,
Anything below that is probably okay. I'm good with that,
it
right?
needs to be. You need to understand that there's just some things that are inherent to roof.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like
yeah.
okay, a shingle came off the roof while we are installing it, and it hit the boss's truck. That's why I don't drive a new truck.
Yeah.
I drive a truck that's good enough
Yeah.
to work and not be embarrassed to drive it,
Yeah.
basically. Right. So you have to be realistic about expectations. Um, and and that's a good point. Wearing ropes and harnesses,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Those things are
I'm sure
are
safety is like
non-negotiable.
also safety is like road like number one priority for you and
Yeah,
your people.
yeah, non-negotiable, non-negotiable. But yeah, operating both. Um, which commander was it that said that armies move at the speed of trust? I think it was.
Yeah, I remember that.
But that's what it is, and you have to really get over your own ego and your own shit that everyone needs you all the time, and you may it's almost
And if they do, what kind of company are you building, right?
exactly like you would measure the effectiveness of your leadership by how well your organization does under combat when you're not there. Um, and so also, I think it's important to run both companies at the same time because if we ever do take on um, outside investment, it's important to know that the team that's there is not just startup individuals.
Yeah.
You need to know that the team you have understands how to delegate, how to trust, how to forgive, um, and how to empower people, and know how to walk away and know that it's going to be fine because you put the right people in the right place.
So I'm gonna send this picture later today, right? So I was in Vietnam that September, right, in the hotel.
Yeah.
Last day was there. Next hotel, they was building scaffolding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like scaffolding like 10 feet high, right?
Yeah.
10 feet
Was it
high,
out of bamboo or what would they?
out of bamboo.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 feet high.
Underrated.
10 feet high. These jokers had no safety harness, no ropes,
Yeah.
flip flops, t-shirts, no
Yep.
safety goggles up there fucking just working away. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was insanity, right? In
Well,
flip
yeah, and
flops.
it is funny because we look at Vietnam and it's a communist country, right?
Mhm.
And so we associate communism with like you know Big Brother watching
Yeah.
and whatnot. But it's weird because you may have a communist government, but there's so many aspects of life that are very laissez-faire.
Yeah.
And so it always struck me as odd, like countries who are on paper more authoritarian than we are,
Yeah. That's how Vietnam
you
is.
you actually have a ton of freedom because they can't
I was
afford
thinking,
cameras on every
if this
place.
United States, this whole block would be shut down. There'd be police
Oh,
everywhere,
absolutely.
news everywhere.
Oh yeah,
Like, yeah, like how
yeah.
dare you put this person at risk?
Well, yeah, I can. It's funny because when I hear stories about like my uncles about what they used to do for fun, um, uh, the difference is very clear in how society has changed in a
Mhm.
very short period. Like when they were kids, they told me that this is true. Uh, when they were kids, this is like you know the 40s or 50s, right? They had a love for aviation always, and they would fly from like Minneapolis to Chicago. And one of my uncles would actually bring like he would capture a pigeon from some barn and brought it with him on the plane. And they're like, "Why? What's with the bird? Why are you bringing the bird in the plane?" He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna throw out the window when we get to altitude."
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, whatever. And nowadays it's like, "Oh, a bottle of water. What do
Yeah.
you do with a bottle of water?"
Well, that's too
Yeah,
big.
yeah. Imagine going to like SeaTac right now with a pigeon and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna pop open the hatch and throw this out when the 737 Max door flies off."
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's
People used to smoke inside the planes and stuff.
yeah, ashtrays in the plane.
Mhm.
Not that I'd want that, but it's just crazy that there's a certain level of freedom in the air
Mhm.
sometimes when you go places, and that's why it's fun to travel outside the U.S. is because you want to know like what does it feel like when you don't have OSHA around you?
Yeah.
What does it feel like um, when that state is not on you all the time?
I think I told this yesterday. So I went to Vietnam with my friends. The other nighttime, first day, in the morning, I'm walking out of the hotel. I have my passport in my hand, and they're like,
Yeah,
"What are you doing with the passport?" Like, I need my ID, right?
yeah,
I don't need to go back in my
yeah,
driver's license.
yeah,
You don't need ID here.
yeah,
Just remember where you live at.
yeah.
Like, it took me like 2, 3 days to get over that concept. Because in the United States, like ID, but they're like, no, what do you need ID for? Just
Yeah.
put it back in your room. It's safer there.
That would be interesting to explore that. Why Vietnam is so different in terms of did they have a lot of personal freedoms there? Is that kind of in the air?
Yeah, it is.
Is
Yeah,
it,
it's very entrepreneurial,
or
right?
I should say, did they have an expectation of personal freedom?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
think they
in
do.
there?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And one thing is too, like, some kind of norm, but everywhere you go, people are like trying to sell you a shot glass, a
Yeah,
piece of
yeah,
pineapple.
yeah,
It's so bad. It's like you eat the restaurant eating, and they try to sell you food in the restaurant eating, right?
yeah.
It's very entrepreneurial, right? And they're very persistent.
They are. Yeah, people are surprised to find out how persistent businessmen are outside the
Oh
U.S.
yeah.
Can't walk
They
down.
definitely
Yeah.
they put the capital H in hustle over there. Like they're
Absolutely.
definitely
Absolutely.
grinding.
It's over the top.
This is impressive.
But what's funny because like I always think like in America we're always being advertised to. Everywhere you go, there's an advertisement.
Mm.
But same way you go through like Dubai, go through the gold souk up there, and it's the same thing. It's just more human to human. You know? But
Yeah, here's a good story too. So me and my friend Kevin walking around in District 1. This guy comes up, hey, can I do a shoe shine? Kevin's like, no, no shoe shine.
but did he have leather shoes?
Yeah,
Could have been okay.
yeah. And then like the guy said, well, no shoe shine. Kevin like,
Yeah.
because he's trying to be nice. He doesn't tell him no. Like he said, oh, next time I see you, I can do a shoe shine. 5 days later, in a totally different part of the town,
Wow.
Kevin, next time. Kevin like, God damn it. It's just take the money, right? I don't need a shoe
Yeah.
shine. Yeah.
Jeez. It's persistent.
I was like, man, and talk about that. Yeah, like, man, this dude remembered you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Give that person a sales position
Exactly
somewhere
right.
else with a real team. Um, that's the untapped potential of immigrants. You
Yeah.
know, that I'm very much in love with.
So back to snipers real fast. So
Yeah.
with snipers, like, what's like, how did y'all take care of your mental health, right? Was it a high rate of PTSD, mental health, depression, or, I mean, because you were by yourself hours at a time? And
Yeah.
I know you're talking about not killing people. I'm sure some snipers did kill people. Like,
Right.
how did that all play out? Is there like any studies like that you know of?
Well, talking about PTSD, um, I think there's a lot of things you can do to get your mind ready for that kind of trauma.
Mhm.
Um, and kind of harden your mindset before it. And that's not to say you're shutting your mind off or you're you're just holding it all in to say. Um, I think everyone deals navigating the moral jungle of combat differently, and some people do it through faith. I find a lot of snipers are agnostic or atheist. Surprisingly, like the infantry and the military as a whole is oftentimes to be thought of very Christian, very faith based. Snipers tend to be not like that. I found, and I dealt with it because it's. I mean, you have one type of trauma, which would be like taking someone's life, which is one type of trauma. But I think the most common thing we have to get through and observe is the the things you are not prepared to see. I think as a young man, you go into combat thinking you picture yourself like in a firefight with the enemy, and as a sniper, you're going to see your enemy through a scope, and you're going to have this complete perfect picture of a good guy and bad guy. The reality is that people who are completely uninvolved with the conflict are taking most of the casualties, especially in Iraq. And how do you live with seeing an airstrike gone bad, that sort of thing? That's the hardest to deal with, and I think like that family I spoke about before, where one man lost two children, one to each different side within 10 seconds of each other, probably. How do you deal with that? I think it may go a little dark, but I I don't have an expectation of peace, zero expectation of peace. So when it happens, I'm not caught off guard. I'm not surprised by it, and I think that helps lessen the blow. I think when you first see combat, like I remember first fire base I went to, um, I was supposed to go on a presence patrol, and it's funny because the presence patrol that went out, it was when when the old unit's going out, the new unit's coming in. You took a left seat, right seat thing. They're showing us the AO as we learn it. We were supposed to go out, but being a sniper section, we stayed back to zero our rifles. We changed altitude. So when you change altitude, you change your zero in your rifle. We stayed back to get that data. The patrol that went out that we were supposed to be on got ambushed. Everyone died on. So one of my first jobs in combat was to I think I was 19. No, I was 18 still. Um, my first job in combat in a combat scenario was cleaning out the brain matter on the seat that I was supposed to be. And that's when you realize like this is the real shit right now.
That's fucking tough right there.
This
Damn,
is
that's tough.
that should have been mine, and survive surviving a conflict could be the decision between looking left and looking right. It could be, you want to say that, oh, because I'm a trained sniper, or I've gone through these schools, I'm going to be harder to kill. And that's true to a point. But survivability comes down to, you look left instead of right, you zigged instead of zagged. And battlefield intuition can get you there pretty well. But seeing that for the first time, I think was a real interesting moment, because I realized, wow, these bullet holes are real. We're not firing blanks. This is real stuff. And 9/11 was still recent memory, because this was back in 2002 or 2003, I think it was. No, 2003. So I was still very much in the game, and I knew why I was there. And so it didn't phase me as much as you think it would. I in my mind, the guys who put those rounds in that seat, in that vehicle, by extension, those are the same guys who did 9/11. And as much of a shock it was to see that kind of thing, I wanted to go fight them 100%. And I think to survive that kind of conflict, you have to change into a warrior. You have to change your mindset. You cannot take with you the moral standards of the cul-de-sac and go into Afghanistan in the mountains and come out spiritually intact. Will not survive. So I think as you get older and as you deploy and redeploy, you have to learn to live with two perspectives. And I use it, an example would be like when you're going middle of the night, you go to the bathroom, your eyes are adjusted to the dark, turn that light on and you're blind. You're as blind as you were in that light as you were in the darkness initially. And so still to this day, what I do, I close one eye. I keep one eye closed to be adapted to the darkness, because they adapt separately. So when I turn that light back off, I just switch eyes. And this eye never changed. I got that perspective still. So when I transition between Afghanistan, when you go become a military contractor and your deployments are no longer a year, your deployments are 3 months or 2 months. You're going from Afghanistan for 2 months, and then you're going to Dubai, where you could go rent a Lamborghini if you want to, because you're making enough money for that kind of thing all of a sudden. So you're going between like the extremes of a third world country combat zone, or at least the threat of combat, to high luxury within a 12-hour period. And so over time, I just learned to kind of switch that eye. Okay, now I'm in a combat zone. I think of the world this way. Go back to civilization, I think of the world this way. But you will never forget what's real, ever. And so, as much as I enjoy whatever material success I have in Seattle, I'll never forget what's real. Never.
So next, let's talk about veterans and transition, right? I think a lot of veterans have trouble transitioning from the military for various reasons. One time of the reasons, but what advice do you have to veterans, like either already out right now who are having trouble like transitioning to the civilian world? I've blocked a lot of veterans groups on Facebook. They're like, here all the time. I was got out 2009, struggle, whatever the case may be. And then, of course, people getting out now, right?
Well, it depends hugely on what you're doing in the military. Civilians don't understand that the military, each base is basically its own city. It is its own city. You have your infantry, or your laborers, I guess you could say, but you have your high-tech stuff. You have people running inventories. You have easily the equivalent of someone running an Amazon warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have like the Department of Defense rules, Army rules, Fort Hood rules, First Cav rules, two battalion rules.
Yeah, we got admin out there. We have, CID. We have
police.
Yeah, we have all that out there, and
medical.
Usually there is a good analog or equivalent to the civilian sector. Like you could be, an intel analyst, and in a very roundabout way may find a way to translate into being a financial analyst, maybe, and I've written about that before, where interdicting a target is much like interdicting a stock in many ways. I won't go into that, but if you're creative enough, you will find an analog. You will find a way to transition. I think, though, when the guys are like a machine gunner, where there's really no clear analog to the civilian sector, that's when it gets hard. when you're a paratrooper or you're a saw gunner. What's the civilian equivalent of a saw gunner, right? There just isn't none, and we can pretend that there's ways to translate that and translate those skills. But I think same way when you join the military, you go through basic, they delete your standards of normalcy for a reason, because 18 coming in with civilian mindset, you don't have much to offer the military. You don't have much to offer. You don't have much to offer a fighting formation with your experience in high school, right? So it's worth nothing to us. And when we go back, it's kind of the same thing. And so I battled that for a while, thinking like, well, how can I convince veterans that what we learn in the infantry is going to be translated into some sort of material success in the professional sector? Probably isn't. It's just not. I wish there was a way to say it. You could say like things like attention to detail could be it, but it's just such a culture shock. It really is. And I would say a lot of those guys would do very well in the trades, 100%. And those guys, they know what it's like to put your body through something to get something done, and be drug free. That's a huge need right now. Roofers could easily make close to 6 figures a year right now if they're good. Anyone in the trades could be making close to 6 figures right now within 2 years of being on the job site. And so, that would be an easy way to transition. Yeah, I think if you're combat arms, trades is where it's at.
So let me opinion this, and I'll probably get blessed for this, right?
Sure.
I think one reason why a lot of military veterans have a trouble transition because like they have the mindset of, not all veterans, but some of them have the mindset like, I served 4 years, everyone owes me something, right?
Oh yeah.
This like can't think of the one I'm looking for. Like I served the country 4 years.
Yeah.
The American people owe me a job.
Yeah.
They owe me this, right? I think that's the big thing that kills a lot of people. I think.
Yeah. Well, and people say thank you for their service and that kind of stuff, and it's just because they don't know what to say.
It's performative.
It's a platitude, really.
Yeah.
And it is kind of annoying also when you have a guy who maybe did like 6 deployments, lost friends, lost a limb, or maybe not even lost a limb, but has TBIs, gone through a lot. Thank you for his service.
Probably had to get it. He probably got divorced because of
deployments. And is on paper the same. Thank you for his service as someone doing like clerical work.
Yeah.
People think that everyone's a gun shooter. It's not true at all.
No.
But yeah, I guess some of them do have like the idea that society owes them some kind of reverence for being a veteran. I don't care that at all. And I don't think it doesn't help at all.
I don't think it does either.
You would never want to hire someone out of a thank you for your whatever.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation a few times before. I've told people, have the attitude in a job interview to be like, well, why should I hire you?
Yeah.
Your answer should be maybe not so hostile, but it should be something to the effect of like, well, you don't hire me. Like, this is the sector I want to be in. I want to do this job. If you don't hire me, I'm going to be a competitor.
Yeah.
So you can have me as an employee, or I'm gonna,
or even like something else like, these are the skills of the military. This is how I translate to your job. If you hire me, this is the value I add. Like I think a lot of military veterans get wrong too. Like they're like, I'm getting hired for $60,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only gonna do $6,000 a year work. Like most companies are not for profits, right? They're hiring.
Mm-hmm.
They hire you, whether you're a veteran, whatever the case would be. They're hiring because they think that you can add value and add profit to the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to pay like $50,000 a year, they expect you to bring them at least double that in terms of time profit, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of veterans, myself included, when I got out, didn't do a good job like articulating that.
Well, maybe even the bigger issue is corporate or whoever running that company, are they communicating what they want with the hiring managers? And I don't think they are.
They're not.
And that's the real disconnect, because I've come across situations where like, go to any company, ask them if they're hiring. No. All right. Well, are you firing? Is there anyone you want to get rid of? Because I'll take their spot. You have to have that attitude.
Oh man, I like that right there. That's good. That's damn good right there.
Yeah. And just
worst person, I'm better than them.
Yeah, and have that attitude and just come in there just hungry for it. And management, or HR would be HR. No, the hiring manager would just they may not be in tune well enough with the pains of the company to know who to hire. We're all just kind of comparing a PDF with the keywords we need. You know, Microsoft, good,
Yeah.
awesome, cool. But I know going into any organization just by the bell curve of personalities that there's going to be 10% who just don't give a shit, shouldn't be there. So I want their position. And how do I get that message across? You know, but I think founders are probably more reachable than ever. Like if you're really passionate about a particular sector, like you want to work in IT or you want to work in defense tech or you want to work in something, if you go on LinkedIn and people are talking about all this stuff actively, like you could be into seeds, agriculture. You could be like your passion could be non-GMO seed banks. And right now on LinkedIn, there's going to be some very passionate people
Yeah.
talking about
I tell all military if I can. You want a job, like you're interested in something, find a startup.
yeah.
You might have to work for free for a little bit, but man, there's you can
Oh yeah,
experience
absolutely.
doing interest at a startup.
Yeah, you want to be an architect? Like all the architects, they're all on LinkedIn. They're all chatting about this and that. Some of them are more sociable than others. Some of them aren't on LinkedIn at all. But you really got to just be part of the conversation and through just daily dialogue. Like, hey, I know that guy. He said this and this, or we had a conversation about that like 6 months ago. And then your resume is not it's not to get in through the door. It's more of a formality.
Yeah. And then now people know you into the vendor sector, you know.
Yeah, because if you know what you're talking about, just get in a conversation with the subject matter experts, and they'll spot the real from the fake real quickly.
And this is my view too. I think in my experience, like the higher ranking you are, the more problem you have like transitioning, right? 'Cause, like too
Hmm.
many people like,
Yeah,
I'm a lieutenant colonel, I'm a sergeant
yeah.
major. I demand this. Like, no, you could be like the Army G1. You're not going to be the VP of Microsoft the first day,
No, you're
right?
not. Well,
And there's expectations that high ranking people have.
yeah, exactly. And plus, we never had to deal with like financial loss.
No,
Really, you know, we're not. We can punish 2,000 paratroopers, have them come in 4 hours early on a Monday because someone got drunk on a Sunday, and we don't have to pay overtime to
no.
2,000 individuals. So it's I think that goes sideways a lot when people look like, oh, this guy's ex-Navy SEAL. He'll be a good business guru.
Mhm.
He won't. I mean, nothing against SEALs, but they just because you can swim well and shoot doesn't mean you can do everything
Yes.
else at
Total,
an
total
expert elite
different game.
level.
Total different game.
So
Another,
I have some things about that. I don't like it when veterans will have an amazing military career and then get out and then like run a nonprofit and then think that's success or
that's one of my pet peeves. We talked about this yesterday. Like, there's all
yeah,
these military nonprofits, right? Some are good, I'm sure, but it's like a lot of them just like Tom Brown starts a
right.
nonprofit getting paid money from grants, right? Like, what are they really doing? Like, I think I told you yesterday, there's actually three fishing nonprofits in Fort Lewis. I mean, JBLM. One is like river fishing, one's
Yeah,
deep sea,
yeah,
one's lake. Like, you're all three fishing nonprofits. Join forces and
yeah,
make it better, right?
absolutely. Yeah, just lower the
Of
overhead.
course, each one profits like Ego or something like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing also in business and nonprofits is that we all like to think everyone cares about what we're doing, and
No one
no one
cares.
does. It's almost like when you buy a car when you're younger, when you're a young man, you buy a car, you're wondering like, what are people going to think about me when I'm driving this? What are
Hmm.
people going to think when I'm wearing this?
Hmm.
No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
They don't
That's
at
a good
all.
lesson plan, right? As soon as you realize no one gives a fuck about you,
Yeah,
because you know
it's
you,
liberating.
yeah, when you're
It
young,
may be
like
depressing, but it should be liberating,
yeah, when
really.
you're young, like man, what's this person like? What's this person like? They're thinking the same thing. Like, what is Jason thinking about me? What
Yeah,
is you thinking
exactly.
about me? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And just go about your day, just knowing that you're a gray man everywhere you go. Even if you do something that's noticeable, you're still
Hmm.
the gray man. No one really cares.
No.
And
And another thing about militarization too, I feel don't realize like you have these companies like they'll always be like, you know, in 5 years we're gonna hire 10,000 people, right?
mhm.
I mean 10,000 veterans, right?
Yeah,
They have the
yeah.
intent, but still you have to be qualified for the job, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, so they might say only hire 3,000, right?
Yeah. Well, there's always fine print to that. So I remember a while back, BlackRock made an announcement they're going to hire however many thousands of veterans. And I was like, fuck yeah, because I wanted to actually go into it
Mm-hmm.
well, I studied economics and I was really deep into it. Like 2008, when I was studying economics, that was a great time to be studying economics and the financial sector, rich with content.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to work for BlackRock at some point. It's my kind of my dream job and be some kind of analyst because I had this whole thing about, you know, how do you track targets as a sniper and how that translates into tracking price mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
price movements and equities. But when I heard they were hiring X amount of veterans, I thought that was my end. Come to find out, the companies that they partially own having them hire veterans.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
McDonald's.
Okay.
It's not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And so,
Like I don't want to be at McDonald's fry cook.
yeah, so I love it when veterans do just take charge, just full sua sponte. I had one friend in Texas. He would buy companies that were not doing so hot, fire the civilian leadership, put all military in charge. And he was one of those guys where he did a job interview. He thought he did well. For whatever reason, someone underestimated him because he's a veteran, and he has a chip on his shoulder until the end of time.
Yeah.
And I love that about him because he has some capital now. He'll go into a company that's not doing so hot, and he'll fire who he thinks need to be fired and put his network in there. And we need some more aggressive action like that. And he made a good point. He was like, veterans need to have more equity in the country. And in that terms of just like asking for equity, making the case for it, but actually going there and taking it, actually owning land, owning real estate, owning physical assets, and making that happen. But also at the same time, not being so closed to the idea that it can only be veterans, or even just. I think you really need capture success if you say I'm only going to work with this particular demographic. Like if I was going to be like, I'm not going to hire any immigrants. That's not my thing. There goes everyone that's good in roofing. So you have to be open to work with.
Yeah, that's always my pet peeve too. Like, when people say I'm a veteran, I'm only hire veterans. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, I could tell you in my time in the Army, I had veterans that worked for me, worked with me, I worked for. I would not hire to cut my grass right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because being in a military area, selling a roof to other veterans, I was like, can you give me a veterans discount? And I was giving crap for it. Like, well, sure. If you have more time in Afghanistan than I do, I will give you a discount. It's not going to happen because you're Navy. And that starts the shit talking, which that shit talking eventually leads into a sale. So they can take a joke usually, but yeah, I really don't try to kneecap myself by saying this is my demographic or this is who I'm going to work with. Anyone who's competent is welcome to the door, 100%.
Yeah. So Drew, is there anything else I asked you that I didn't know? Anything else you want to talk about?
We touched everything. Putin, AI,
Agriculture failures in Ukraine.
Yeah. Lushenko, that's going to bother me. Is it Lukashenko or Lushenko? Let's talk HR in a small business.
Okay.
I will say the one thing that sets us apart from other people is going to be our retention. Most roofing companies, like when we go give a bid, people will say, okay, this shingle is rated for 30 years. This one is also for 30 years. Like, what's the difference? And I'll tell people it's the person who's installing it. I can name the crew. I'm the only person you're going to talk to who can tell you name by name and the life story of everyone on this job. Everyone else is going to tell you they might know, but their attrition rate and their turnover is such a high pace that if you say, okay, I got a bid from company A, I'm not going to go with them because of whatever reason. I'm going to go with company B. In the 6 months between bidding and actual work, those two companies have traded employees 6 times. So who's going to be in this job site? And how can you, as a salesperson, really say like, oh, this job's going to go well and everything's going to go smoothly? You can't even name who's going to be involved in the project.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. Small business owners like get rid of people so fast. Like they realize it's way cheaper to retain people you haven't trained them to be better versus getting rid of them, hiring someone else you don't know.
Yeah,
it's insane.
So for me, I do unexpected pay raises. I don't tell people they're getting a pay raise. I just do it. I'll go on Square, just be like, boop. And I don't even tell them I did it. Just their next paycheck, they're like, oh shit, I got a pay raise. Cool, thank you. And when it's unexpected, it helps a lot. A lot.
Man, the boss is looking at me.
Yeah,
the boss does know.
That's all people need to know. They need to know that if they're suffering, they just want you to know that they're suffering. Like if it's 90 degrees out, a freaking ice slushy or whatever, just that. And I'll do it to other crews. If I see another roofing company out in the field and their crews like sucking in the heat, I'll bring them slushies.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they'll be with this company and they see my company truck show up and they're like, the hell's going on here? Is there some bad beef or is that L&I or what the hell is going on? And I show up with like some some McDonald's ice cream.
Yeah.
They're like, who the hell is that guy? Do
Yeah.
you have a card? You know? So that's my hiring practice. I want to know, I want everyone else to know that like when you are in the trenches of the job, 90 degrees out, or if it's 30 degrees out, I see you. That's all it takes. It doesn't take much to for people to just feel acknowledged.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way because um, like the guys that work for me, um, I I believe in their story of where they came from and where they want to go. And if I'm a transistory employer on that path, so be it. You know, I love watching someone like come to me and then get their life together and then go on to better things. That's a really awesome thing to see. So I think, you know, HR, especially in the trades, it starts not so much with like, and you know, we'll probably differ on this, less about like um, paying attention to making sure that all the right signs are posted. People know their rights and all that kind of stuff. That's important, legally speaking. But they need to know that they're seen and appreciated. Doesn't take much. Pay them on time, pay them well, and they'll stick around.
Yeah, when you're talking about the compliance, the legal posters, I call that HR old, you know, like the old HR, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to be
yeah.
the new HR. You have to like, okay, that's legal stuff. You have to be there, you know. But how you
Yeah,
like, how you making like, what's your culture? How you making people come to work?
yeah.
How you make them, you know, quote unquote,
You got to be
empower
legit.
them?
You got to be legit, and that's with anything, like either with like marketing or anything. There's no shortcuts to it anymore. Uh,
I mean, your employer brand is so important, right?
Employee brand.
Yeah, the brand of your employee, like your company's in brand.
Yeah, yeah. How they portray themselves.
Mhm.
I get most compliments from that actually, like how kind everyone is. Um, and they're funny. If sometimes we have customers that just talk a lot, and the crew will be like, "Oh, no hablo English," and they speak English.
Yeah,
They just don't want to like they
they're,
just want to work.
yeah.
They don't want to come like they're on a
This
roof.
this this is not a social call.
Yeah, yeah. So they'll be like, let's get in the rooftop and just
You
not
want some
talk to
iced
anybody.
tea? Come down for iced tea.
Yeah, yeah. They'll pretend to just not know what's going on, and
Yeah,
it's an easy way out. And they're like, oh, this person talks a lot.
yeah.
But yeah, you know, retention. There's no way to fake it.
Mm.
If people know you don't give a shit, they're going to know right away. And especially in the trades, there's going to be ample opportunities for a business leader or a boss or a foreman to demonstrate whether they care or not. Um, you know, whether it be, you know, a minor mistake or a mess up, a shingle hits my truck, how I respond to that, um, um, or how I respond to requests for like an early cash advance because
Uh,
of whatever reason. That's hugely important. But and those are all things people say. You hear gurus talking about like, trusting employees, and it's easier said than done. You have to have the right crew also,
yeah.
because I've had people where I would 100% not
Don't
trust them with
deter.
a damn
They don't
thing.
deserve your trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and there's a lot of that in trades, and that's why we're a small company. I mean, I think what we got is kind of a rare thing, and um, you know, to grow means to lower standards in a lot of ways, because there's just not that many good people
Mm.
out there that are as good as what I have.
I definitely like the way you do raise. Like one of my pet peeves, are like you know, you have a company, um, and Tom Brown goes to boss. Hey, boss, can I get a raise? Here's a raise. Like maybe Tom Brown doesn't deserve a raise.
Yeah.
Maybe by giving a raise, you fuck up your financials, and the person who actually deserves a raise next month doesn't get it right.
Yeah, yeah. And it
I think
will,
too many small business owners do it like that,
yeah, and it
unfortunately.
gives you the freedom to basically do it when you think it's appropriate, when you're financially ready for it. And um, you know, inflation has really been hurting people really bad. I have I really thought for a minute like people who are making 21, $22 an hour, what that really means, because I've almost forgotten what that's like, and I should not have. Um, it's crazy to think how much an extra $200 a month. So it's crazy, and I can just easily my next bid that is a few $1,000s. I can make that bid. The next few of them, 1,015, 1,020, whatever. It's no difference. Once you pass that $1,000 mark as a customer, what's 1,015? It's 1,000. What's 1,200?
Yeah.
But for an employee, uh, another $200 a month, that's a car payment. And so that's huge for them. So it's really important to just kind of see the world from their perspective and see that, like, especially with the grocery bills,
Yeah, like
and just,
a dozen eggs is a $12 or something crazy.
yeah, like, I save money.
Fast food's not cheap anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I save money on the road by just going to the grocery store. I don't eat at a restaurant at work. I'll go to Safeway and grab some veggies or something, and um, I'll walk out of there, and that's just 2 meals for the day, and that's $20. And I have to think like, well, shit, I have a roof cleaner right now making that's like an hour of their work just to eat for part of the day.
Mhm.
So probably after this, I'll go do another pay raise for him. Just now that I'm thinking about it. Um, but that comes down to the sales team. Like, if you can't afford to do a minimal pay raise on your employees, why is your sales team doing so bad? It's on them.
Mhm.
It's on them to make that work, and it's also on you as a business leader to make sure that your product is so damn good that by the time the salesman gets it in their hands, it's hardly sales, it becomes retail. So it's a it's a mutually supporting relationship, right? Where the product has to be legit, such that sales doesn't have a problem selling it, and when they do sell it, they're not overselling it because the product is actually legit, and that in turn creates enough wealth for the people who do the work that is unseen to be seen through their paycheck. So I think it starts with the product led development, 100%, and then having a good sales team.
So what's something like you started your company, RoofTec?
Mhm.
What's something when you first started like you kind of struggled with, right? It kicked your butt, but now you're like, that was the easiest thing ever. What took me so long to figure this out?
Yeah, thinking how to do everything goes back to trust, and I mentioned trust multiple times because it's the lesson that I learned the most. And I've always hated being controlled and micromanaged. I always hated that. Um, and it sucked to see myself doing it to others and not allowing myself to give them the room they need to show what they can do. Um, so yeah, I think I wasted a lot of time doing everything, a lot of time, and um, it took Ukraine. It took me a combat deployment essentially for me to just be like away from it and realize not only are things okay with me gone, they're actually better sometimes because I am so involved in it and everyone's so dependent on me that nothing happens. So I would give that advice to almost any business leader. Like, leave, just go away and just see what happens while you're gone. Because the people who are capable, the people who care will rise to the top. They'll meet the obligation and they'll come out as superheroes. Those are the people who need to stay, be rewarded for it. The people um, who are assisted an undue amount, that'll be seen. And people will you have to be gone long enough that a new norm sets in. People are used to you being gone now. And it's almost a lazy way of doing it. But when you come back, you almost come back to a new company. And it's very counterintuitive to do that.
The problem with that, I think too many people have such egos, like they come back and like, oh my God, the company
Yeah.
running around without me. Like, what am I needed for? They play their own
Yeah,
mind.
hopefully nothing. And then that gives you a chance to start a new company. And then, you know, ultimately my goal would be to generate enough revenue off of like my other startups to have that be my paycheck. And then whatever RoofTech makes on top, I can just go back to the employees. I don't need RoofTech to pay for my groceries or anything
Mhm.
like that. It can take some off the top a little bit, but I would much rather it be more like an employee owned endeavor. Um, and I think that only comes after you've had the same crew, the same team for a
Yeah.
while. Like, you want to see them do well. It really sucks to see people who came from nothing, are intelligent, are capable, they are drug free, and just by the circumstance of like our particular economic times and our geography, just not be able to just make it by no fault of their own.
Let me ask you this, like go back to the military, right?
Yeah.
So I used to be in first cabin, on first cabin unit, like on like Abrams tanks, whatever. There's something called like full crew man, like I make this number, like 7 people be in a tank,
Yeah.
100% capability, or you do minimum manning, like only 3 people running, right? And of
Hmm.
course you have the gunner, all the different
Right.
things. Is roof the same way, like full team, you need 7 people on the roof to do everything,
Yeah.
and certain people do certain
Yeah.
jobs?
You need four minimum.
Or okay.
Yeah, four minimum. I think just safely, you need four minimum. Um, there are one stop, they're like one man shows out there that will do like one roof, one guy, and it'll take them like a month, you know. But there's a few of those out there, but I think four is minimum. No more than seven. Seven gets a little chaotic. Uh, Starts looking like a garage sale, as I say. But yeah, I think four minimum, seven max.
Okay.
Yeah, and then yeah, the most important thing is a dump truck. You gotta have a dump truck, 100%. And that actually got stolen recently.
Oh shit.
Actually, not recently. It got stolen. I was out in Ukraine,
Damn.
and that was a true test of what happens when I'm gone. It really sucks. Like, okay, I'm gone. You guys take care of it, and then like our biggest fiasco happened while I was gone. And they got it sorted out.
Do you have any mentors? Anyone that mentors you?
No, I have people that I look up to. Um, they probably don't know that I look up to them. Um,
Are you mentoring anyone?
no,
Okay.
no. I think one of my biggest mentors ever was the guy who sent me to sniper school, Jason Kohler. Um, by far the best leader I ever met in the military. He kind of like saved my military career just by being a good influence. Um, and I don't I don't have a whole lot of mentors aside from that. The thing I'm realizing recently is just using my full brain power and getting to that by uh, getting rid of my fear of not being correct or fear of getting it wrong. Essentially, I think fear is like a very taxing program to be running on your CPU. If you can end that task, you know you can free up a lot of compute power in your brain. And it took me a couple of decades to end that task and just think clearly.
So what's a skill you don't have right now? Like if you had the time, you go learn the skill easily. But like you did you did
Mhm.
like the damn, I can't think of the word, but like you did the cost analysis, right?
Yeah.
You want to learn this skill, it'll help you get better, but for cost analysis, you don't have the time to learn this skill right now.
Or like a technical skill.
Any kind of skill.
I think it's body and knowledge, all things waves. I feel like about a third or maybe half the universe could be understood if I understood waves better. Everything from radio waves to electromagnetic waves to liquid, light.
Mm.
I think when we understood waves and vibration, that unlocks a lot of problems in engineering. Um, that I've just had so many issues in engineering and drones and robots where I come to find out, oh, the problem was like some type of uh, um, some type of interference from some type of vibration was causing some issue. And yeah, I think waves is. Sorry, that's a very geeky answer. Waves.
Yeah, that is a nerdy,
A
nerdy
very
answer.
very geeky answer. Well, it's funny because you go through this phase of like, okay, I'm going to podcast everything, listen to all these YouTube videos, blah blah, blah, and it's all like surface level things. I'm kind of past like the 101 of whatever. And now I want to know the nitty gritty. I want to get a book like this thick on electromagnetic frequencies. You know, I want to know that very well. I want to be like the world authority on vibration. And that's huge in sniper school also, is the harmonics of a barrel going through uh, the internal ballistics of the round and all that in accuracy. So yeah, I think sorry to give you the geekiest answer in the world, but waves, knowing waves.
So Drew, you gave a lot of good value, but before we get out, can you give us any wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
I think I'm empty. Yeah. No, there's always more, but if I could say anything, it's hire a team you can trust and then trust them so you can go do other stuff and learn to forgive them.
Drew, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Cool.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.